Welcome everyone to the Islanders Say Die podcast. I'm your host TJ, and with me here, as always, is our NHL analyst and expert, the Grumpy Old Man. They say there's no shame in his game because he is always the same.
That's me.
Also with us here is Philzfacts. Phil, how are you doing this afternoon or this evening?
This evening, doing great. Just got back from vacation, well rested, got some sun. Back up here in Toronto where the Leafs are melting down. Can't complain.
How white do you look normally if you just said you got sun?
Whiter than this. A little whiter than this.
Now, Phil, before I ask you a quick question, why don't you push whatever you need to push right now? Well, actually, no. TJ, push our stuff first. I'm sick and tired of you pushing Phil's shit first before you're pushing our stuff.
Yes, this is a twice a week Islanders podcast that occurs every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're new to the show, we invite you to stick around a while. Subscribe on YouTube, like on Facebook, and follow on Twitter. We also go live during some of the games. As long as they're Eastern Standard Time, we'll usually be going live on the games as long as they're not on a Thursday and Sunday. The only reason we don't go live on Thursday and Sundays is because we have a separate podcast called TJ and the Grumpy Old Man. It is an all sports podcast. We just talk sports and shoot the shit. Yesterday, we were going to think about going live, but I made a little oopsie. I didn't know it was at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, the game time. Otherwise, we would have gone live yesterday. But yes, Philzfacts is a co-host there, and he's a guest there on Top Shelf Hockey Cast. And you can find him. Now, we've got this linked in the description below, as well as his Twitter feed linked in the description below.
Okay, so is that it? Is that all you do, Phil?
That's all we do. I sit down with David Tuckman and BD Galoff once in a while. If you want to follow David Tuckman and make some money gambling on hockey or other sports, he's at Tuck on Sports. BD Galoff is at BD Galoff. Very original. But we talk Islanders whenever there's something to talk about, which this season has unfortunately just not been often enough. Or in the case of Grumpy, who's been waiting for a season like this for quite some time. I mean, this is where Grumpy makes his living.
That's right. This is right in my wheelhouse right now.
Your bread and butter.
These podcasts write themselves for me. Now, before we get into Islander stuff, Phil, we had a guest on this show, I want to say about a month and a half ago, and he referred to you as Phil's Fiction.
Talking about Andy Francis, Grumpy.
Oh, I was going to let Phil know if he was aware of this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Battle.
The cat's out of the bag. I'm sorry.
I am aware because Andy did reach out and he wanted to get ahead of it, knowing that I frequently watch your stuff. I don't watch every single one, but I watch as often as I can, of course. And I happened to see that one. Andy's very entertaining. He's a very nice guy. He's got very astute Islanders observations, and he's often right about the things that he talks about and tweets about. And he reached out to apologize and let me know that it was all in good fun, and it was taken that way. So, Andy, no hard feelings. We talk amongst ourselves now on Twitter.
Oh man,
I love it. First of all, anyone who comes on this show and thinks that anything we say about anyone is serious, they're morons. Just telling you. So, TJ,
I'm not going to touch that one.
Yeah,
I'm not going to touch that one, TJ.
Right.
I'm glad. But we're joined here a little bit different than last time we had Phil on the podcast. At least the last time we had Phil on, there was a little bit of a modicum of hope that the Islanders would find a way to fight and claw and scratch their way into a playoff spot. At this point in time in the season, I mean, it's all she wrote. The Islanders, I think, are going to be, sellers at the trade deadline. We're starting to see a lot. And as a name of players who are being shopped around, what values may be. And there's a lot of shit that you're going to have to wad through in order to find what might actually be true, because just about anybody's name is being thrown out there. Not everybody, but a lot of players' names, and some players I don't think they have any chance of moving.
Agreed. I mean, listen, I spoke to David and BD 2 weeks ago. We sat down and we went through every single player on the team. We did marry, I don't know if you could swear on the show, but marry, screw, and kill with every single player on the Islanders roster. Most players I would say are in play. If a team would want to call up and ask about someone, I think that you take a listen. You don't listen on Barzal. You don't listen on Dobson per se. You don't listen on Wallstrom right now. But I would say that most players, if it's something that could help you next year and beyond next year, I'd say take a listen. But some of the ideas, and I think what TJ is referring to, are the Kyle Palmieri talk, the Josh Bailey talk. There are no suitors for these players. Kyle Palmieri has a full no trade till next summer, till summer of 2023, and then it goes down to a 16-team no trade. Which playoff contending team right now could commit 3 more years at $5 million to someone who has that, right? They're not going to want to be able to take, they're not going to be able to take that on from a salary standpoint, and then you can't get rid of him in the summer. Something that makes sense is Varlamov, right? If a team like Vegas thinks that Leonard is not going to be able to play in the postseason, it's a logical fit. And then in the summer, Varlamov's the kind of guy that you could easily trade off anyways. So it could be kind of like a rental where they pay assets to the Islanders, take Varlamov, and then ship him off somewhere else. But this graphic you have up here, in my opinion, is nonsense.
Well, I guess I should say the way it's phrased, right? It says that they will undoubtedly listen to players and offers on players like Josh Bailey and Kyle Palmieri. We got a lot of wiggle room right there, right? They're going to listen offers and players like. So not even Kyle Palmieri and Josh Bailey, just players like them, and undoubtedly they'll listen. So there's a lot of wiggle room on that. When you see stuff like this, I had to say, pump the brakes a bit. We're not moving those guys at the trade deadline in all likelihood. You know, you can fantasize over it, dream of it, but probably not happening.
Okay. Elvis didn't have that much wiggle in 1956. I'm just saying. But now, Phil, there's a question. You mentioned the game that you played. I wanted to know which Islanders you wanted to bang. I mean, because that's what you said the game was. So I'm like, okay, I'll ask the question. I asked the hard-hitting question.
Josh Bailey. Always Josh Bailey.
There it is. That's
you know what?
Always
that's
Josh
really
Bailey.
not a surprise.
But yes, and again, I think the most recent one, right? Josh, the Minnesota Wild are believed to have had a conversation about Josh Bailey with the Islanders. Nothing imminent at the moment.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe Bill Guerin still thinks that it's Josh Bailey from 10 years ago when he was on the team, and that he's 22 years old or something like that. I don't know. Doesn't make any sense.
This is how it went. It went. Bill Guerin calls up Lou. Lou, don't even try to push Josh Bailey on us. Thanks. Bye. Click. So maybe they did have a conversation, but that was how it went.
No, I think it's something like, hey,
was.
I think it was something more along the lines of, hey, Lou, we need a nice cost-controlled right-handed D-man. What could we do for you in order to get Scott Mayfield? Yes, Josh Bailey. Josh Bailey is available. No, Lou, I said Scott Mayfield. Yes, Bailey is available. But I think that's how it went.
Okay.
Oh,
I think mine actually sounded better, Phil. Nice try.
But we're seeing a lot of names being thrown out there. I don't want to go over kind of distinguishing the two of who you think can legitimately be moved. Who, again, like I think you could bunch it up into different sections. I think there are players that are safe bets that yes, those players will be moved, i.e. your Zach Parises, your Cal Clutterbucks, your Zdeno Charas, your Andy Greens, if Lou is willing to let them go. And I think there are players where, again, it's a little bit more of a stretch, but I could see them leaving, like your Varlamovs. It depends on what the future is for the team. If immediately if they trade a guy like Scott Mayfield, they're going full on retool, full on rebuild. I don't think it will happen, but if you keep Mayfield right, I think you're looking to compete for the cup next year.
Yeah, correct. It really would depend on what you plan on trading Mayfield for. But I think we could all agree that Mayfield is, if they were to trade someone, Mayfield is probably the most valuable trade piece that they have.
For certain.
Considering his cap hit, considering he's just perfect for playoff play, as we saw last postseason, under contract for one more season. So this isn't a rental situation. But it would really depend on what they're flipping him for. An NHL-ready prospect, another NHL player on another team. I don't know.
Draft picks. All I want is draft picks. That's all I want. Nothing.
They want for Christmas.
Now,
I think Grumpy wants to be the Ottawa Senators for the next 6 years.
No, I'd rather be the New York Rangers from 3 years ago. That's what I'd rather be.
We could talk about the New York Rangers, but what the New York Rangers did is just it's not achievable for pretty much any other team. You need to have a Ranger fan from Jericho who happens to be a Norris caliber defenseman cry his way off 2 teams in order to come to play for you. So unless there's another one of those that want to come play for the Islanders that I don't know about, that's one. Number 2, you need a top 5 winger to decide that he wants to sit down and settle on Long Island as opposed to Broadway or LA or some other premier destination, which the Islanders, they're just not a top 5 destination in hockey. They're just not. Even with the new building, I don't think they are. They're never going to win a battle with the Rangers. Now, the Rangers don't have cap room, per se, to add a Forsberg or someone like that. So already the 2 biggest pieces of the Rangers rebuild wasn't Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere, who were their number 1 and 2 picks in back-to-back drafts, or 2 and 1. Those guys are pretty meh overall, and most of their other first-round picks that they drafted and they developed have pretty much been terrible. Filipino has been terrible this year. K'Andre Miller, he's okay. Do you feel good about him on the second pair in the playoffs? Probably not. Nils Lundqvist, they sent him back to the AHL. Braden Schneider's, he's fine on their third pair. And then they happen to have a guy who's having one of the best goalie seasons in NHL history, who they brought over last year or 2 years ago. So that's just not a replicable model.
So what you're telling us is we need to go ahead and start scanning through all NHL players' baby photos to see if anybody wears Islanders pajamas going to bed, is what you're trying to tell us. That's a key portion of the success.
Is Mike Komisarek available?
Who?
Mike Komisarek used to play defense for Montreal. He's from the island.
Oh, man. Yeah, maybe get Charlie McAvoy on board. Yeah, Grump,
no.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, the Rangers are not a team that were built through the draft. As a matter of fact, in the middle of the rebuild, they traded a first-round pick and Neil Pionk, a young defenseman, for Jacob Trouba. And then they had good holdovers like Kreider and Zibanejad. None of these draft picks are carrying them anywhere. The model that you want to go by is just essentially trade every single person away for draft picks, kind of like what the Ottawa Senators did. Will the Senators be any good after this? I don't know. Who knows? They traded Stone. They traded Duchesne after they had traded Turris and other things for him. They traded away Dzingel, who was a pretty good player for them. They traded away Pajot. They traded away Carlson. And 3 years later, they're still a pretty shitty team overall.
Well, yeah, but they moved them because they had no chance of re-signing them. So, I mean, if you're going to lose somebody for nothing, you have to move them.
But they could trade them for NHL players. They could use those picks to trade for other NHL players. They just went completely rebuild through the draft, and no one has any idea how that's going to end up working for them. We've seen that already, right? We've had an Islanders regime under Garth Snow that had 5 top 5 picks in a matter of 6 years or something like that, including a 1 overall, a 3 overall. And how did that work out? We got as far as the second round to get spanked by Tampa in 5.
Well,
with premium draft picks and multiple first rounders in drafts.
I do want to interrupt there. I don't think we're anywhere. If you were to do a full rebuild, as Grumpy espouses, we're not the Ottawa Senators. At least we have more young pieces to build around than Ottawa did at the time period when they blew things up. I mean, right?
Are you getting Barzal to stay around for a rebuild?
That's
where Grump, you're gonna have to get rid of Barry Trotz.
Well, oh my God, we got so much going on at once. Grump, I don't think we're going to be able to do a full
that one. But I mean, I don't think you're going to get Barzal to stick around for a rebuild at age 25.
You've got
Shabbat was what, 21 when they started tearing things down? He wasn't even a regular yet. It's entirely different.
I don't think you rebuild. You have to retool, but you can do so in a drastic way. It just depends on what exactly their ideology is, right? We've talked about it before. Is Barry Trotz the right guy for this team going forward? I don't believe that's the case. And, I know Grumpy doesn't either, but I want to hear your take on that, Phil.
I think it's as simple as he has 1 more year on his contract for $5 million. It's not even a conversation that is worth having at this point because he's going to be the coach next year. The owners are not going to eat a $5 million loss and fire Barry Trotz after back-to-back ECF appearances. And it's something to discuss more probably into next season when he's due either for an extension or for them to part ways at the end of the year, or maybe even mid-year if they start off the season 7 games below 500 by December.
Why wait?
But
avoid the Christmas rush. Dump his ass now, Phil.
They're just not gonna do it.
I know
You think
Ledecky
and Malkin are gonna eat a $5 million loss on one of the best coaches in the NHL right now?
How much did they pay to build that arena? Because I mean, that's
You're making a very
right
compelling case as to why they're not going to fire Barry Trotz.
How was it not crazy that the Seattle Kraken had more of a packed house than the New York Islanders UBS Arena was? Like, I mean, like I look at during weekday games and I think to myself, oh wow, I said Seattle Kraken. I mean, for as bad as a hockey team they are, I mean, like, man, they're kind of filling the stands, and I notice there's a lot of empty seats here, and the empties just continue to fill in UBS. And as we continue to slide our way out of playoff contention, it's only going to increase. I think what hits them in the pocket is saying, yeah, we're not filling the stands. That obviously is an issue. And if they see, again, I think this deadline will be telling as to what happens. I think you've got to sell pieces. Do you keep a guy like Varlamov? I think, again, let's go back. I think there's 4 pieces we can all agree that probably will be sold. Andy Green, Zdeno Chara, you've got Parise and Kyle Clutterbuck. We can all agree that those 4 pieces in all likelihood will be sold this year at the trade deadline, right?
But I don't think all of them will go. I think Clutterbuck will. Reason with Clutterbuck is not that I want to resign him, but even if they did want to resign him, his home is in Garden City. He's lived there for so many years that he's not going to end up staying with the team that he gets traded to. I don't want to resign him, but the point is it's not someone that Lou would think he's losing. That's an easy asset to get right there. Andy Green and Zdeno Chara are in the same boat where Lou's just going to have a conversation with them. And if they don't want to be traded, they're just not going to get traded. Ugh. And ultimately, if you think about it from a franchise standpoint, is going mercenary on Andy Green for a 6th-round pick and sending him west versus the optics of, wow, this is a pretty shitty organization that a guy who was a captain of the Devils waived his no trade clause specifically to go to the Islanders because he wanted to stay home. Why would I ever want to go play for that team? Is that worth the 6th-round pick?
Here's the thing.
No, that's not worth a 6th-round pick.
He's 40 years old, and it's the only place in the league he'd actually be able to play because no one else is taking 40-year-olds on their team.
Do you want to have a chance to compete for a cup? I mean, that's how I'd phrase it. Grumpy uses that all the time. I could say for a guy on
they'll ask him the question.
And even if they say, I don't want to, still, tough. I mean, this is business, man. Sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
I wouldn't do it. If it's the type of thing
Lou's going to be gone anyway. Lou's going to be gone after next year anyway. So it doesn't matter what the cachet is on him or what the league perception is. He's known as he's loved. He's heralded amongst the league.
Is he going to be gone next year?
He'll be here next year. Yeah, he's got 1 more year left, right?
Trotz has 1 year left.
Lou does too. I thought they signed. So? Yeah, I thought they signed. Both of them had the same contract or similar.
Lou is going to be here, I think, as long as Lou wants to be here, unless things really go off the rails next year. I mean, that's a separate conversation. But to me, I think Chara is going to want to get traded just because he's going to want to compete for a cup. Maybe Boston takes him back. Maybe
Boston will not take him back
as a 7D. Who knows? Or maybe that bridge is burned. But I mean, you're really not talking about anything. Parise is the interesting one because I think Parise actually has real value, and I can't see why any cup contender would not want to have Parise. Yeah. I personally am of the opinion that I would love Parise back on the league min deal next year to play in the bottom 6, preferably the 4th line with Casey Cizikas. But if you have an opportunity to sell Parise and you could get a couple of picks like the Buffalo Sabres got for Eric Stahl last year, which is a 3rd and a 5th for a guy who is completely shot, which Parise is not. If someone's going to offer you a 2nd-round pick for Parise, jump at it and maybe have a conversation about what his plans are next year and if it would be something that he'd be open to entertaining coming back league min.
If he continues to play on the first line, what is it? Was there a bus stop over there? What the heck's going on, TJ? That's got to be something from TJ. I guarantee it.
No, it's not.
No, that's nothing from me.
What the hell, Phil?
Anyway, go ahead, Grump.
I didn't realize you're doing this out of a train station in the men's room. But I mean, seriously, Zach Parise, if he continues to play like he has now, he's on the first line. Oh, there's a shock.
He's got hustle still.
Yes. I understand. His value just goes up. I mean, if he continues playing like this, I could see you getting maybe a 2nd-round pick for him.
I seriously,
at 37.
I seriously think you can get a 2nd-round pick for a guy like Zach Parise. And here it is too. I don't know. To think that we're going to be a cup contender under the same Barry Trotz next season, I just don't see it. And that's why, like, the big issue is, right, if you don't sell a guy like Scott Mayfield and you want to go for the cup, do you have the right coach involved in order to go ahead and allow you to do that? But I mean, Parise will get you more than I originally had anticipated this year at the trade deadline. And now that he's playing on the first line with Matt Barzal, I mean,
let's hope it stays that way. Let's hope they keep him on the first line.
He looked good. I love the hustle and the effort out of him. Again, he was doing everything but scoring earlier on, but he's not going to be a guy who's going to play on a top six on any playoff contending team, but he could play a bottom six role and do so with a lot of pop and energy. And again, he's very
penalties.
He's
tenacious. Yeah. I mean, I tweeted out yesterday, it's been a tale of two halves for him so far. First 23 games, he had 4 assists and a goal, 5 points in his first 23 games. In his next 23 games, the 46 game mark, 5 goals, 9 assists, better than a half a point per game of the last 23 games. Is he doing anything differently from the first 23 to these 23? No. 4 or 5 of those games happened to have been where, you had 3 or 4 forwards out and they were playing with, the AHL blue line. So that definitely had an effect on it because they weren't scoring in those games. But he's not doing anything differently. He's played well the entire season. The production just happens to be coming now. I think he's a valuable piece to any team that wants to take him, and I think that multiple teams will be interested, and it's the type of thing where you might not expect it, but teams will get into a bidding war on that kind of player.
For certain. I think you're going to get more than what you expect. I wouldn't even be shocked if you get a second and something. I mean, just looking at the way he's played as of recent, people always overpay at the NHL deadline. And so I think those 4 pieces, and I hate the fact that, and I don't think it's that I'm ignoring the player relationship aspect of it, but to think that we're going to give the option for a guy like Zdeno Chara, Andy Green, do you want to get traded?
If you're talking about a third, a second round pick or something like that, then you probably don't. But we're talking about a Braden Coburn price tag over here of a 6th or 7th round pick. That's really what we're talking about here. A 1 in 100 to make the league in maybe 5 or 6 years from now.
But
is it worth that for a perceived taint on the organization as a destination with regard to how they treat these players, especially in regard to Green, who specifically waived a no movement clause to come here? That's the only thing I ask. Is it worth upsetting that for a 6th or 7th round pick? I personally think not.
You look at recent history. In the 6th round, we drafted Jared Spurgeon, Anders Lee. We've had successful players at a 6th and 7th round. I'm just saying, when you're talking about the draft for a team that doesn't have a lot to it, sorry, man, we need to make sure we're throwing as many darts on that board as humanly possible. I mean, Lee's been a guy who's been a top line player for us for years. Jared Spurgeon, top 4 defenseman. I don't know. Man, take what you can get. Thanks so much for the service. You really helped out, and I appreciate it. That I want you to have a chance to win a cup. We're doing you a disservice unless we do that right now. I don't want you to go down.
I can hear that argument when you're wondering why people don't want to sign here because we're mercenary about it.
No one wants to sign here anyway. No one signs here anyway, Phil.
Perhaps. And
nobody wants to sign the Barry Trotz.
I don't think this helps. I don't think this helps.
I just
Trotz is the biggest. Go ahead, go.
I just wish TJ would shut up after he makes his point instead of trying to hammer to death. I mean, Phil, how do you look at TJ spitting facts at you, Phil? How'd you like that?
No,
I love that. I love that. Listen, we had Lee. You're right. We had Spurgeon. We traded him away. Anyone else recently come to mind? No, I mean, what was Lee? 2009.
I'm thinking of it the most successful, right? I'm thinking Lee and
as many kicks at the can for somebody who's 44 years old and somebody who's 40 years old. They're lucky to be in the NHL right now. Lucky. No one wanted Zdeno Chara. No one. I don't care. It's that I don't care. How does it make us look? I mean, what, we have to worry about Andrew Ladd signing here? Who cares? No one comes here to sign for us. No one with any talent is coming to Long Island.
Barry Trotz is the biggest impediment we have with signing unrestricted free agents. Nobody wants to sign up offensively. Nobody wants to sign up for that system and that style, I don't believe. And that's the biggest issue, right? We've got the brand spanking new stadium. That was a big issue. Well, we had to commute between Barclays and Nassau. Well, that was a big issue. And okay, Nassau Coliseum was a dump. That was a big issue. It seems like we're slowly crossing everything off the list that could have been an issue. And now, what's going to be the excuse going forward?
I guess we'll find out this summer. This is going to be the first summer where they're actually going to have a lot of cash to play with. We'll see. We'll see who hits the market. We'll see who they bid on, and we'll see what they end up landing.
Well,
I don't think Barry's as big of an impediment to it as you think he is. But I mean, the player's already getting paid. I could understand your logic behind 23-year-olds don't want to play for him because he suppresses their production by making them play more of a two-way game, a 200-foot game. He stresses the importance of back checking when he should be stressing the importance of scoring and filling the net. And therefore, Oliver Wahlstrom is not going to get the same contract that Joel Farabee got, because Farabee played for a shit show where he was able to juice his stats in a team that gave up the most shots on goal. I think they're probably still giving up the most shots on goal. And Wahlstrom's not going to get that. I could hear that. That makes sense. But a 28-year-old Philip Forsberg, who's going to be signing a contract until he's age 34, I don't really think he cares once he gets paid.
He will not come here. Book it, Phil.
He specifically might not come here. But that's not to say that other players might, won't.
I'm talking endorsements too, right? You get paid. Endorsements are how clients. That's how they're going to make a good bit. What are you shaking hand for? Do you look at a guy who's marketable, and you look at a guy like Matt Barzal, who's extremely talented, and you look at prior Trotz and with Trotz, and you say, all right, he's scratching and fighting his way to score 60 points a season. This guy, if he was playing on any other different system in the NHL, would be putting up 80, 90, 100-point seasons left and right. And again, you talk about how that's impacted his pay. I think it has.
You keep on pushing endorsements.
Players get paid out the ass.
Okay, it's hockey. It's hockey. It's not the NBA. It's not the NFL.
Listen, there are really only two markets that applies to. That's the New York Rangers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And neither of them have really any money to spend anyways. I mean, what are they going to go to Nashville and get endorsements?
I mean, I'm just want to hit again on the
Minnesota.
It's like
go back home. I'm a native out there in Seattle. Oh, I'm tearing up in the league. Okay, now I'm posted on some McDonald's. I mean, I tell you, trust me, you get more through endorsements than you believe. I mean, like, here's the thing. What's the difference of, okay, you're also going to have to pay higher taxes in the state. If we're breaking it down, dollars in your pocket, there's a lot that you take into account. And New York is just one of those areas, right? If you're not getting the endorsements too,
okay. Here's Zdeno Chara's endorsement. Get sand and learn to skate just like me. I mean, that's what he can endorse. I mean, come on. What? I don't see any Islanders getting any endorsements. None.
Now you're gonna make me try to pull up some endorsements.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me go to work.
It's only a 12-hour podcast. See if you come up with something.
Can't think of any.
Yeah, there are none. They don't get
the Josh Bailey Burger King commercial. You never seen it?
I think that was the one where they were emptying out the trash, I think, for city sanitation.
Oh, good gracious. But we're in a situation where, right, I think those guys are going to be moved. Now, do we see a guy like Varlamov or a guy like...
Can I just touch on one thing?
Yeah.
One of the reasons why, particularly when they finally throw in the white flag, right, they got to be a week or two away. That's it. And maybe, we trade Andy Green or Zdeno Chara, and it gives Robin Salo a time to play legitimate NHL minutes for the rest of the year.
Right.
See, to me, I think that's an advantage. I mean, we've seen Aho play, and he's not looked out of place. I know you don't like him, Phil. I understand, but he's been okay back there. I don't mind him on the bottom pairing. I'm just saying, I'm willing to move those guys, even if it's just for a 6th-round pick, just to get these guys ready for next year, because Zdeno Chara and Andy Green are not going to be part of next year's team. So why not see if the young guys can produce? I guess that's the way I look at it.
Right, I agree with you. I mean, listen, I think they want to keep Salo down as long as possible, probably to see if they can get Bridgeport into a playoff spot, because they're like this close with the way the playoffs are reformatted for this year in the AHL. So I don't know when there would be rushing to call him up, but I'd love for Salo to get on that second pair with Scott Mayfield and see what he could do, put him in a more natural position where he's not playing on his offside, and see how he does in a more normal roster position. Aho's probably not going to be here next year, so I don't really care to see him play. But I agree. If you're able to get assets for these players, and these players are not going to be here next year, you're not going to re-sign Andy Green. You're not re-signing Zdeno Chara. More likely than not, Zach Parise is going to do what Joe Thornton and Corey Perry have been doing the past few years, and looking at the best team available and trying to chase a cup. And that's probably what he's going to choose to do, in which case you trade him for what you get and you say your goodbyes. And then you plug whomever into that position who you might want to get a look at for next year. Kiefer Bellows, Simon Holmstrom, whoever it might be.
What?
And
Kiefer Bellows, yes, Simon Holmstrom. My son saw Simon Holmstrom play. He's like, who is that translucent bastard pretending to skate up and down the wing. I'm like, oh, you must be talking about bang, 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 bang. The hillbilly boy. Put him up. Not that.
Well, Grumpy, just because we're speaking about Simon Holmstrom, I'll put up the one you want to see. But now this was the one that the assist that Philzfacts was talking about before the podcast had started. Now this right here is Simon Holmstrom, Grump. You're going to see him here in action, number 15.
On the PK.
So he threw the puck towards the net, and the guy knocked it in.
You like how Bridgeport
you were trumpeting up early? That was it.
Do you like how Bridgeport is being outshot at that point 15-5 in the first period?
Oh, I mean, well, Springfield, I think, is the best team in the division. They don't really have a chance in this game, I don't think. I don't know the score.
Grant Hutton up with the big team.
You're asking, though,
to play over who? Dobson? Where are you going to play him? He's a righty.
Well, what happens if you move Scott Mayfield, your most valuable piece?
By the way, Matt Barzal, sponsored by CCM, Adidas. I'm just saying, right, when you score more goals, you put more pucks in the net, maybe you have Bauer coming your way, you can leverage that into more money through endorsements. He's got endorsement deals, right? I'm telling you, these players have more endorsement deals.
He's not doing something for Felsberg Diamonds. That's what I'm saying.
He's
advertised, so he's being a sponsor for hockey sticks, just like half the players in the league.
I'm just saying, when you're scoring a lot of goals, maybe they're paying you a little bit more to be the sponsor for the hockey stick, and maybe you're on a few more advertisements that they send out in the little magazines where they say, "Hey, buy our hockey stick."
Keep dreaming.
What do you mean, keep dreaming? That's how it works.
Keep dreaming.
Yeah.
He probably gets $50 a commercial every time it.
That's what it is. He signed. Yeah, he just.
I think he gets more than that.
That's all he gets. Free
like those late night things, those infomercials they run at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Matt Barzal for CCM here. All right, give him $25. Send him on his way.
So we're talking about Scott Mayfield. Now, this is something Grump and I have discussed. Unless you think you're a legitimate chance of winning the Stanley Cup this next year, you should trade Scott Mayfield. Scott Mayfield has not been paid very much in his professional career. He's on $1.45 million a year currently, and he is going to want to get paid, right? You talk about guys who take hometown discounts. If I'm in Scott Mayfield's shoes, I'm not taking a hometown discount. I want to get legitimately paid for all the work and effort I put in. I'm now, in the prime of my career. I've never been paid much. I want to get paid. So I don't think we're going to be able to re-sign back Scott Mayfield. He's probably going to want $4.5 million per at least. After this, when he were to be eligible to re-sign or would like to re-sign, and if he goes on a free agent market, that's a guy who's easily getting maybe $5.5 million. And we're not going to pay him just as simply. We're not going to pay him the same exact that we play Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulak. I don't think we're going to all pay them the same amount.
No, and yeah, when he comes up for UFA, he's going to be 31. That's probably not. You don't want to have another person on the back end around that age locked up for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, and this is where we're going to diverge a bit. I think if you're going to trade Mayfield for something that could be helpful next season and beyond, I'm all for it. My main concern with doing a full-on rebuild is the best chance, and I think I said this before when I was on a few months ago, the best chance that this group or any Islanders group for the next 10 seasons is going to have to win a Stanley Cup is with Matt Barzal. And with that in mind, everything they need to do, every move that they need to do has to be with keeping him happy and getting him to want to extend past when his contract is going to be up next year. He could simply sign his qualifying offer and say, I'm taking $10 million, in which case you pretty much have to trade him because that's him saying he wants out. And that's what they would end up doing, trading him. I think if you're going to trade Mayfield they're talking about Toronto. If Toronto's going to give you a high draft pick, and also throw in someone like Travis Dermott who could slot in next year into the lineup, that's something I'll entertain. I just don't think you could strip away everything from this team and ice a non-competitive team next year and hold on to draft picks in the late first round that may or may not pan out in 4 years from now and just assume that Matt Barzal is going to stick around for that ride, because I don't know that he will.
When I'm talking about even, I'm not saying hell bent has got to be picks, right? When you look at a team like Edmonton, that's a team that needs help. That's a team that needs defensive help, right? They've picked up guys like Philip Broberg, and you say to yourself, okay, that's a guy who's on the precipice, on the cuff of maybe breaking his way into the NHL. You look at a guy like that in addition to draft picks. I'm just saying there are options where you can get younger. I just think to myself, Scott Mayfield, if you don't win the cup this year, it was a waste to keep him. Or if you don't go to win the cup next year, it was a waste. And you've got diminished returns because right now you can promise Scott Mayfield, not only for this year, but for next year, for a top 4 defenseman who shows a little bit of offense, who's good in the playoffs, for $1.45 million as a top 4 defenseman. That is fantastic. It's a great deal. I think it's more the deal than the ability that's going to get you really paid for a guy like Scott Mayfield.
Sure. And if you're telling me that we're going to get assets and those assets are going to be used as part of the package in the summer to get Jacob Chikrin, who's a very good second pair left-hand D on a very good contract.
I hate him.
You might hate him, but I think he'd be perfect here.
Really? Barry Trotz wouldn't like him.
I think he'd be perfect here.
He's a freaking turnover machine. He's a turnover
this
machine.
This year. Listen, I'm willing to overlook one really legitimately awful year from him in an absolute shit show where he wants nowhere but to be the out. And I would take a chance on a guy like Chikrin. Not many guys could score 18 goals from the blue line in 65 games. There are not that many defensemen in the game that have that kind of goal scoring ability and who are also defensively strong.
How many does Noah Dobson have?
Noah Dobson has 8
or 9. Trust me. Noah Dobson, if you play with a different team, not under Barry Trotz, he'd be a guy who's scoring 18, 20 goals a season too.
Absolutely, Phil. Facts.
I just remember I was like, I still feel firm that if you have the ability to lock Noah Dobson up for 8 years, I'd throw $6.5, $7 million. Doesn't matter. Make it happen.
Oh, look at that.
Why are you paying him more than what he's worth for the next 5 years?
More for the next 5 years?
They have 5 more years of team control on him. What's the point?
To number one, you've got a guy, you don't want someone to sweep in. He's going to get offered. You're trying to tell me somebody wouldn't go ahead and look at that talent and say, hey, we can go ahead and really throw an offer sheet in there if you don't
He's not offer sheet eligible.
Not this year. It's not this time period, but next year down the road. I'm just saying that guy's
no one's offer sheeting him. Come on. No one offer sheeted Kale. I mean, I don't think Makar was offer sheet eligible. He may have been, but no one offer sheets anyone.
That's right. No one. Yeah. I mean, I hate to agree with Phil.
Kakaniemi was off.
Oh, come on. That was just a revenge thing because of what they did with Aho and Montreal. They knew that Montreal didn't even want to keep Kakaniemi and they preferred Dvorak, and that's the only reason they did it.
Well,
they weren't upsetting the apple cart there. Trust me.
And isn't Kakaniemi's a free agent after this year?
No, he's still a restricted free agent. He's still a restricted free agent. He could really screw the Canes by signing his qualifying offer. That'd be pretty funny.
I noticed why, I've always wondered why Phil pisses me off. And he's a nice guy. I like to, it's his name. I see Phil, and I think Philadelphia Flyers.
So
can't help it, Phil. But that's what I see.
When Cale Makar was offered, and he's getting paid $9 million per.
Are we really comparing Noah Dobson and Cale Makar?
Well,
it's not even close.
Noah Dobson get paid. Well, hold on a second. Okay.
It's not close. Noah
Dobson is built more for playoff style hockey than Cale Makar is. Would you disagree with that? When things get physical, when you need to use your body, who's got the ability to go ahead and use a body and who doesn't? Cale Makar is not a guy who's going to be ultra physical out there in the ice. I'm not saying Dobson's a world beater, but he's got the ability, he's got the body size where he can go ahead and body people out in front of the net. Cale Makar
put 20 pounds on. I mean, let him put the muscle on and do it. You still see him get muscle off pucks.
He's 22. He's 22.
Sure.
He's a boy.
But I mean, you're comparing him to the best offensive defenseman in the game. I mean, he's not even in the same league as the Makars and the Hiskinens and the Foxes and Shabbats. He's just not.
Would you be opposed to an 8-year extension, $6 million per? I wouldn't.
I would sign him for 3x3 first, and then you have another 2 years of control, and then you work from there.
That's going to be a guy.
If you sign him for $6 million this summer, you really impede your ability to do something bigger than to do something that they need to do in order to get more talent. And then you have the Barzal and Wallstrom extensions that are going to be coming up after next year, and you're just going to be putting yourself in a pinch for no reason. I think you sign him for 3x3. He doesn't have any arbitration rights this summer. If it was a situation where they only had 2 years of control left, like where they were with Pulock 2 years ago, where I said they made a mistake and they corrected that mistake by getting Pulock on a good deal this past summer. But if it was that kind of situation, I'd be in full agreement. But they've got another 5 years of team control over here. Why not get him for 3? And then by the time he's due a new contract, you've got Anders Lee gone anyways.
Oh, why'd you have to bring him up?
Sorry.
So hold on. I just want to make sure Noah Dobson is going to be a restricted free agent until he's 27.
27, yeah.
That's when you become unrestricted.
Unrestricted, 27 years old. Same thing with Wahlstrom. They both have 5 years left.
Had
Dobson played 41 games in his first season, they would have lost a year because it's 7 years of service, and a year is defined as being half a season or more, which the Rangers got lucky with Ryan Strome. I'm sorry?
What, he played 30 some odd games that first year?
I think he played like 36 games or something like that, plus one in the playoffs. So that did not count as a year of service. They've got 5 more years on him. They've got 5 years starting next year on Wahlstrom. I mean, if he was Makar caliber, where you would run into a situation where you're going to have to pay that person $13 million when it's up, then I'd agree with you. But to me, his upside is it's not Makar.
How old is Makar?
23. I think he went in the year before Dobson, if I'm not mistaken.
Somebody I thought he was old. I don't know. I thought when he signed that deal, he was 23.
He's either 23 or 24. Yeah. At most, he's 24. And then he signed that deal at 23.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Kim McCarr.
So they had
maybe 2 years older than Dobson.
He's 23.
He's 23
right now.
Okay.
I'm just saying, could you see somebody swooping in? I know you say, hey, it doesn't happen all that much. You could pay a first and a third round pick for a guy like Noah Dobson if you offer him up to $6.1 million, even if you offer him $4.1 million, right? That's
3 years from now. And 3 years from now, the Islanders they'll match that.
Second. I'm just saying, you want to keep players happy. The guy's an offensive talent. The guy's an offensive. I'm telling you.
Okay. Can I just say something, TJ?
Yeah,
they never give the younger guys long-term deals ever. But they make sure they they took out that fire hose and blow that cash all over those washed up pieces of those jabronis who are littering the top 6 on this team right now. They can't help themselves. And that's why I say, Phil, you say all these things. Yes, this, we should do this, that, and the other thing. Do you really have any faith that we're going to be able to make moves in the offseason to actually improve the team? Because Lou has not made a move in the offseason since he's been here. Not a one. Not one trade. Not a one. Not one. Zero, Phil.
I agree. The off seasons. Listen, he came in, Tavares left, and he kind of put a beer league team together, if you will, where he signed Filppula and Komarov and the Robin Leonard Reclamation Project. And every single player that he signed that summer ended up contributing in some sort of meaningful way. Even Filppula had 17 goals. The next summer, they were faced with a choice. Once the Panarin signing was off the board and went to the Rangers, they were faced with a choice. The choice was they could either let all these players walk. You could let Eberle walk. You could let Nelson walk for nothing. You could let Lee walk for nothing and sign 3 other random free agents, or just tank and be absolutely terrible, having received nothing in return for those 3 players. And he decided the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And that was ultimately, to me, I think that was the right move. You gave yourself a couple of opportunities to go chase a cup, and they came that close, and it didn't work out. And now they're in a period where, for the first time since that summer, they're actually going to have money to spend. These past 2 summers, they didn't have any money to play with. They were busy signing their restricted free agents, and they needed to make room for their restricted free agents, and that's really what the plan was over here. They have to make room for Pelech, Beauvillier, Sorokin.
And I thought he did a great job on Pelech and Pulock. I mean, those signings, and again, they haven't looked as fantastic when they get separated. I think they're better when they work as a tandem. I mean, anytime you slap a guy like Andy Green as your partner at times, I mean, you're going to struggle. Does it seem like Pulock's lost a step or two? You think
he broke a foot? So,
well, then why is he playing?
Right, we're only supposed to play it for 100%, i.e. Oliver Wahlstrom.
Well, Oliver Wahlstrom, I just figured out why. You know, Phil mentioned I just think that Barry doesn't realize that once you make that magical 41 games, that every year after that counts. Maybe think if I can hold them out under 41 games this year, we have another year of team control. Maybe, but I don't think he realizes that you can't do it after you've started that clock. Phil, what do you think about that?
I don't think that's the consideration.
Facts, Phil,
I don't think Barry cares about any of that. I don't know what's up with Oliver Wahlstrom. Oliver Wahlstrom should be playing. He should be playing. If he's healthy, he should definitely play. If he's not healthy, then he shouldn't play, because non-healthy players shouldn't play. Pulock, he's working back from a broken foot. You're right. He doesn't look like himself. He also has to carry Sebastian Aho, who's pretty terrible. And before that, he was carrying Andy Green, who was playing pretty terrible.
I'm going to tell you what. To me, Aho's been carrying Pulak. He's so slow. I'm like, hold on. Is that
Aho's
out
fast?
there?
People tell me Aho's fast. He falls over himself. He gets muscled off of pucks like a child.
He does.
I don't know if you saw that 2-on-1 that went the other way when he got stripped of the puck in the neutral zone yesterday, and then he just fell. No one was near him. I don't know what he's doing. He's just a very sloppy skater.
It's because Pulak was still caught up the ice thinking he's doing his Zdeno Chara impression. Just all the way. I'm like, where the hell is Pulak?
Aho's going to be an unrestricted free agent this summer, and he's just going to go.
Do you notice how Butch likes to say Pulak will be out there screwing up, and he'll say, man, that Dobson, he needs to be better. I'm like, dude, he's not even on the ice. I know a 6 looks like an 8, but at least get the guy right. Come on.
He gets the 6 and the 8 confused all the time. It's hard to see. I mean, it is kind of hard to see. They're both right-handed. They both have a similar kind of build. Dobson's 2 inches taller. The 6 and the 8 are the same. I get it when you're Butch's age and maybe the eyesight's failing him, and also Butch is Butch. He gets. I think it was. I think it was Wahlstrom. No, it was Dobson who scored a goal, and Wahlstrom was the net front screening presence on the goal. I can't remember which game it was, but Butch kept saying, and that's a great job by Dobson, and a great job by Dobson also screening the goaltender. And he said it 5 times. And I'm like, Dobson is not the guy who's shooting and screening. That's Wahlstrom in front of the net. Come on, Butch.
I just want to say one thing. I watched the Seattle broadcast last night.
Oh, well, we're going to go there, huh?
Okay. I don't know if they put ads in the Penny Saver to get, hey, show up. You can be an announcer for a Seattle Kraken game. The girl, whoever, Leah Hextall. Leah freaking Hextall.
Oh, is that Ron Hextall's wife?
No. It's probably his daughter.
Oh, probably daughter, yeah.
She did her best. Who was the guy? Pepper Brooks from Dodgeball. The color commentary when he'd say, oh, they're not here. Yeah, it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them. And she said on that disputed goal, says, the guy just went through the whole explanation on how he was outside the crease and the other guy was shoving him in. And he says, so that could get overturned. And then she goes, well, look at that. Do you think him being the white on the regular ice surface is going to have any effect on that? And they like that awkward silence. And then it gets overturned. Then they go to the rules and now, their rules expert, who's also horrible, Dave Jackson. And I mean, he was brutal.
Did anybody do a good job last night?
No,
not
at all. It was
play-by-play. The color. Who did the color last night?
Derek Moore.
Terrible.
He hated. He goes on this. Well, let me finish the first part. I actually sent these clips to TJ. Of course, he did nothing with them because my input on the podcast is not valued at all. Everyone knows that. So I have to do everything from memory. Right?
You sent me a 4-minute long clip. You're like, here you go, have this on the show.
No, that was the introduction for the Kraken franchise. The Kraken. So, okay. But here's the thing. Dave Jackson just explained why he thought that it was going to get overturned. She goes, well, it got overturned. Dave, what do you think about that? Can you explain it? Well, Leah, just like I said before, he was outside. So he had to repeat the thing that he just said to her. And in between, she said, would that make a difference? I'm like, holy shit.
I learned something new last night.
Linda Cohen. Well, Linda Cohen was between the glass. Man, she's looking old. I'm just going to say she looks old as shit.
Comfy. People might say the same about you, but I know
I am old as shit. You don't see me on TV.
I saw people pointing out that they were saying, "Oh yeah, Cal Clutterbuck's played all of his 9 seasons with the New York Islanders since being drafted by the Islanders or something like that." So again, they weren't very familiar with the team. It was.
I mean, that's so basic. Like I thought Bucci Gross was terrible doing play-by-play, but he's not going to get something wrong like Cal Clutterbuck was drafted by the Islanders. At least he'll know some of his facts. Most of these people don't follow the team on a regular basis. The only national guy who does is Anson Carter because he does games with Shannon Hogan.
We like Anson Carter.
So he'll know some things about the Islanders just from watching them. But none of these people actually watch the team. I mean, Bucci was talking about the Islanders in that Flyers game as if it's so devastating if they lose to their playoff chances, when in reality they had no playoff chances. Oh, and they just saved their season over here because they're trending up in the right direction. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Has he not watched this team in the past 2 months?
In his defense, he has to push that teams are relevant when you're doing it from the
ESPN.
From the national.
When you're doing
Fair.
the studio show. That's the only thing I'm going to say. They all do that. They don't want you tuning out because they know they got more useful Islander games coming up, so they got to push that. Yeah. And what was the other thing I was talking about who was terrible too?
I don't know, Grumpy. You're going on everybody. You're talking
because
about the commentator. The videographer was missing the puck on consistent basis. You're giving everybody.
That's an ESPN issue, though. ESPN, I find that their broadcast is awful. They always miss the puck. I don't know why. It's worse than the Florida Panthers, where it looks like the video camera is under the arena. You can't even see the ice surface when the Florida Panthers play. I don't know what the hell that camera angle. Can they not get it from higher in the arena so that you could see the whole damn thing?
Well, they know there's not a whole lot of people sitting in the lower bowl seats. So like, what the hell? We'll just set up the camera here so we get a better view of the game.
That's what it looks like, right?
Yeah.
Never see anything.
Derek Moore. This is the other thing I remember. Derek Moore. They were talking about Zdeno Chara because he played 1,651 games, tied with Chelios, whatever it was, or passed him. I forget. Doesn't matter.
Tied him.
Okay. So they were saying, well, Derek Moore, you played with him in Boston, right? You know Zdeno Chara. Yeah, I played with him in Boston. You know, he wasn't really friendly. He was kind of mean. You know, I didn't really like him. Okay, so he's ripping
something Chara. Like he was all about winning or something like that.
Yes, it was ridiculous. I'm like, yeah. And then later they say how Noah Dobson has been crediting Zdeno Chara for his growth of a player this year. And then Derek Moore says, yeah, you know, he's been really good at that with everywhere he's been, McAvoy and, you know, all these other guys he's played with. I'm like, dude, you just ripped him a new one and how miserable he was as a person. And now all of a sudden he's great for turning young defensemen into productive players. Okay.
Even if you had, like they said, what do you think about Mike Milbury? I mean, like when you're asked a question like that, you usually paint a somewhat rosy image of him.
It was so bad that I had to record some of it. That's how bad it was. I'm like, holy crap, this is so bad. And I sent it to TJ. Dude, you just got to slap it up there. And they all talk with like the Valley Girl, like the Kraken, hockey is part of this region forever. I'm like, oh my God. And this girl's like director of marketing. I'm like, how do they give out these jobs once again? Who do you know?
Yeah, maybe if you're not watching the game, if she was doing radio, for example, you would have not a clue where the puck is at any time because it went silent for like 7 seconds. And Brock Nelson doesn't describe what he's doing. And Brock Nelson, and that's a goal. You know, did someone pass to him? Was there a puck battle anywhere? Where are they facing? Was it a penalty kill? Was it a power? What the hell's going on? You have no idea.
I know how she got the game. I know how she got that gig. Seattle Kraken's front office played that game that you play, Phil. Marry, kill, bang. That's what it was. Guess which one she was. I'm just saying.
Oh, good gracious, Grumpy.
Leah Hextall.
Hey, they say nepotism isn't dead in sports, but
it's alive and well.
That's a bigger issue in the NFL than anywhere else. But good to see that's making its rounds all across.
And if people want to hear about that type of stuff, TJ, what do they need to do?
They need to listen to the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man Show. We go live tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There you go, Grumpy. That's a nice little plug.
Smooth segue.
Oh yeah, Grumpy. You had to go ahead and hit me with it, but I appreciate it.
Layup for you. Even you got that one.
Yeah, for certain. Now I want to talk about Varlamov and where we think he could be on the move for. Now again, Varley was out with COVID, didn't play against Seattle. As being healthy, didn't play against Seattle. Do we think a guy like Simeon Varlamov is a guy who could be moved at this year's trade deadline? Again, a guy who's got a year more of team control, a guy who does have, I think he's got a modified no trade clause, correct? 16 team modified no trade clause. Yeah. I'm not sure what you would get back in return for him, right? I think that the number one goalie on the market at the moment is Marc-Andre Fleury. And just because, again, he's a rental. And I
veto to trade to the Capitals.
You said Boston is hot for him, too. Boston's hot on him.
I believe that. I believe the Leafs are in on it. He's not going to go to the Leafs, though. But apparently he vetoed a trade. I think it was Elliot Friedman who reported that Washington asked several times, and Fleury, because of his loyalty to the Penguins, has committed to never playing for the Capitals.
Wow, what a freaking hero! What a hero for the. I'm okay. I'm saying as a Penguins fan, you're like, you know what? I mean, think about it. He got the bad end of the shoe out of town. What are you looking like that for, Grum?
Okay, why would you not want to leave Chicago? You have more chance of getting shot in Chicago than making a save, pretty much.
Well, he could go to Colorado.
He's going to get traded. He just doesn't.
Colorado's going to need a goaltender.
Yeah, like I said, Boston's hot for him also. I
don't know why they would be though. Ullmark's a good backup.
He
doesn't have playoff experience, but he's a good goaltender though.
Ullmark would have to go the other way.
Maybe. I don't know what Ullmark's trade protection looks like. Maybe he doesn't have any.
He's on a 4-year contract. He was just signed this offseason.
Yeah, he's got 3 more years, but I mean that doesn't mean he can't be traded. Yeah. I think Varley would have plenty of suitors, right? He just was part of 2 teams that had deep runs. He was a big part of that. He was great against Boston, except for one awful game against Tampa in Game 5. He was very, very good against Tampa, holding them to 2 or fewer goals in 5 of the games. He's good. He's a good goaltender. I think you could get a lot for him. Again, as it pertains to competing next year, I don't think Sorokin is someone who you want to rely on for 60-plus starts. I think there are very few goaltenders in the league that you ever want to give that amount of starts to. And you have to take into consideration that there's going to have to be someone else who's going to come in and plug 30 games. The other thing you need to consider, aside from the fact that it's a very bare UFA goaltending market, is that because Varlamov only has 1 year left, if the goal is to ultimately bridge this relationship to a Sorokin-Škaric tandem, which is probably what the organization has in mind because Škaric's playing well, 1 year of Varlamov helps you do that. If you're going to give Lou the opportunity, I am scared of giving Lou the opportunity to give Braden Holtby something like 3 years by $3 million.
Well, what they should do and what they will do are 2 separate things. I mean, like you've got Thomas Greiss, who's got prior. I feel confident with.
He's dead. He's dead. He's totally dead.
I thought the same thing before Pierre Greco and Mitchell Korn were there. I think those 2 goaltending coaches, and again, right, we talk about the pluses and the minuses of having Barry Trotz. That's definitely one of the pluses. I think they can plug whoever they want in there, and they're usually going to have a successful goaltending tandem.
Greiss was trending down before he left. He had that incident in the Columbus game where they pulled him, and Varlamov ended up closing out that game. And from that game on, for the rest of the season, he was terrible. He had the 2 wins against the Flyers in the playoffs, and then he got shelled in Game 1, and they pulled him against Tampa. Last year in Detroit, he was bad. This year in Detroit, he's been even worse. He's 37 years old now or something. He's older than Corey Schneider, just to give you some context there. I don't want Thomas Greiss playing any games here. He's played with these goaltending coaches. It's not like he's not familiar with the system. He was just trending down in a pretty bad way for the second half of that season in 2019-2020. I think he's done.
Yeah, for me, it doesn't have to be Thomas Greiss, but I think that you can get any backup goalie in the offseason. There's always a glut of them available. Somebody gives you 25, 30, 35 games. There's a glut of them. And if Barry Trotz is back, an average goalie can become very competent here under the coaching style and the system that we play. So that doesn't bother me. I just don't want to spend $5 million for backup. I just think that's way too much.
I don't think they're going to. But again, you run into a situation where you might think you have Peter Mrazek, who just got paid big money off of a playoff series win against the Islanders 3 years ago. And he's shot. I mean, he's completely shot to hell. I don't think it's as simple as you just pick anyone off the carousel. Leonard was a talented goalie before the Islanders got him. He had a .920 and a .924 in 2 out of his seasons with Buffalo. His last year, he ran into mental issues, as we know, but he was always a goalie who was highly regarded, good pedigree, big size, able to use that frame, and he had good numbers. It's not like just picking up Peter Mrazek off of 2 hip surgeries and praying to God that he returns to some sort of form that he had behind the Canes defense. So I'm just skeptical as to how easy it is to do that. But if you're going to get a massive return for Varlamov and then potentially have that return help you next year and in the future, sure.
Yep. That's my point of view. But I think we can all agree that Marc-Andre Fleury is number one goalie on the market, and Varlamov is number two.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we
and same thing with the goalie market next summer. Marc-Andre Fleury is the top UFA goalie. Behind him is Kemper, who, I mean, buy at your own risk with a guy like that who's got such injury history. After that, there's really no one, which is what makes Varlamov with the extra year to a team like Edmonton more attractive. Maybe Colorado wants him back, considering he's got one more year of term for next year, and they've got no one under contract. Who knows?
I mean, you even look at Pavel. Who do we play against? Was that
on Colorado?
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. We played against him this year. We played against him this year, and he looked good against us. Correct?
We didn't play Colorado this year, though. We haven't played them yet.
Maybe I was watching different Colorado games. Fair enough. I think they're the third string goalie for Colorado, right?
No, Francouz is the backup. He hadn't played in like 2 years because he had injuries.
Okay.
And surgeries and stuff like that.
Kemper's the starter.
Kemper's the starter, right?
Gotcha. I couldn't remember how it went with them, but even
we played Francouz. I think it was 2 years ago.
That's right.
In a 1-0 shutout. Anders Lee broke the tie. I think it was an assist from Dal Cole or something like that.
I agree with you, Grump. Paying $5 million for a backup is a little absurd. And Phil, I want to kind of understand your take on Sorokin. Now, you make a lot of comments on Twitter about Sorokin, and I want to hear what your take is on Sorokin. I'm in the camp of the guy's a top 10 goalie. I think he's got all the makings and will be, an elite level goalie, and could be a guy who's top 5 when all is said and done, in the league year in and year out. Right now, I still think he's a solid top 10 goalie for us. And I think that the issue's never been goaltending for this team. I don't think the issue's ever been Varlamov. He's let in some weekies. I know Sorokin's let in some weekies, but I think Sorokin's a top 10 netminder in the NHL.
I think I agree he has the tools to be an elite goaltender. I think he can be a top 10. To me, he's probably somewhere between 11 and 15 this season. Again, we all refer back to the series against Pittsburgh where he was absolutely incredible and use that to arrive at the conclusion that he's all of a sudden an elite goaltender. He's very good. He makes some of the most amazing saves you'll ever see. He had an incredible one last night against Seattle that kept it a 4-2 game. If that goal goes in and all of a sudden it's 4-3, maybe they push it a little bit harder and they lose that game. But his angles are just off. I haven't seen him save a clean 2-on-1 shot ever. It's to the point where the defender should probably be taking the shooter and leave Sorokin to play the pass, because they just and shooters you've never even heard of are just beating him clean. He gives up goals from wacky angles, like to Giroux and to Josh Anderson and Sam Gagner literally behind the net, or Hornqvist in a spot where you don't even think the puck could fit through. He's very inconsistent. I don't buy the argument that, he's got no goal scoring support. I think in like 14 of his last 17 games, they've given him 3+ goals. He's been getting goal support. They score when he's in net. Sometimes he just screws it up. That Wild game, prime example. They dominated that game. No reason why they should have lost. He was terrible that game. Against Buffalo, I thought that fourth goal he for sure should have had back. And some of the other goals in that game he also should have. I mean, he's very good. I just don't think he's the dominant elite world beater Hasek type that Islanders Twitter makes him out to be. So I try to be the counterweight to that, if you will. But I don't think he's bad. I think he's very good.
I think Anson Carter brought up a good point real quick, Grump. And he talked about when he gave up that goal, I think it was to Anderson. And again, like how he was cheating a little bit off the post. Again, I'm a firm believer of, hey, butterfly style goalies are going to go down to stop those 5-hole and those low shots. So if you put one top shelf that rings in off the post and the crossbar and in, they're most times going to go in. Doesn't matter how sharp the angle is. But he mentioned that, when you're doing that, your trust of your defenders of doing their job is not there. And I think that could very well be having an effect on him when you've got guys like Chara and guys like Green who play every single night. They're not in the right spots all the time. They're guys that are slow back in transition, etc. I could definitely see the trust not being there with the defense and the goaltending tandem. And, does that affect and allow these shots going from crazy, outstanding angles when they put a fantastic puck in? For certain it could. I still think the guy, like, you're looking at save percentage of, he's still top 10 or ninth, tied for ninth in save percentage. And I think to myself, he's ninth in save percentage or tied for ninth in save percentage. And he's got 44-year-old Zdeno Chara playing every single night. He's got 39-year-old Andy Green playing every single night for the most part. And you had a carousel of other individuals, and we had Ryan Pulak, who was out. So you're missing, top pairing defenseman, and you're playing with two guys that, and on a good team, are both 7 pairing defensemen that are playing monster minutes for that team. And again, the guy's top 10 in save percentage. I'm all but happy with his performance, just like I'm all but happy with Varlamov's performance.
The one thing that I love the comment that Carter made, and he's like, and Butch was like, well, sometimes you got to stand up, and that shot's not going to go in. Okay, every goalie plays the butterfly style. They're always on their knees. And I thought the Anderson shot was just perfectly placed. Yes, he was down. Here's the thing. Sorokin is not 6'5" or 6'6". He's what, 6'2"? I mean, he's down on his knees. He just picked the top corner. And I 100% agree. How many passes come across ice that he makes spectacular saves on with athletic ability?
A lot.
Because his defensemen just aren't there. I think our defense has really been down this year. Oh, TJ's going to put some. Yeah, I mean,
well, that's the picture right there. And again, like, you got to respect the 5-hole shot as the butterfly goalie is. And this is Dobson right here, who's late to the party. So
yeah, I don't know where Dobson was on that play. I don't know where Bailey was. It was a miscommunication between a lot of, like, 3 different players. It was Pellick, Bailey, and Dobson, and no one was there. Probably should have been Dobson, but listen, well, I think I have very high hopes for him. I do. Do I trust him enough where I want any stray backup goaltender coming in next year who's an unknown quantity? I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous about that. What you're – go ahead.
I'm sorry. We've seen Varlamov give up goals just like that as well. It's just the style they play. I mean, unfortunately, that's the weak spot for butterfly goaltending. Yes, they're going to take away the lower part of the net. Most shots are the lower part of the net. How many guys are able to pick corners? I mean, not a whole lot. It's really tough. And you see, I mean, Anderson just walked in on that.
Yeah, they gave Anderson a ton of space. Listen, people think I hate the goaltender. I don't hate the goaltender. Why do you hate the goaltender? I thought he was gonna be Shesterkin. That's honestly what I was hoping he would have been. And he just hasn't been anywhere near that level.
Do you think Shesterkin would have the same production on this team with Zdeno Chara, Andy Green, and Ryan Pulak out for 2 months? You think he'd have?
The Rangers give up like the 4th to most high danger chances in the entire league.
They're not.
Sorokin is 5th.
They get outshot on a consistent basis.
Right? He's 5th in high danger save percentage. Sorokin is.
Shesterkin's 1st by a mile.
Okay,
Shesterkin is analytically the best goaltender in the NHL. He gets pelted way more than both Varlamov and Sorokin on a nightly basis. If not for the fact that they have Shesterkin, the Rangers would probably not even be in a playoff position. That's how much he's carrying him, to the point where he should probably be the front runner for the Hart Trophy. I think they've played 20 games without him, and in those games, they're literally 500. He has like 5 regulation losses, Shesterkin, this year. The guy's insane. He's got like a 940 save percentage. He's
hot. He's hot. There's no doubt about it.
And he's facing way tougher assignments than Ilya Sorokin is, given what his defense is giving up in front of him. Watch the games. Look at the analytics. Look at the shot count. Shesterkin is facing a much more difficult task night in, night out than Sorokin.
I think the trust thing is a big part with Sorokin. I really do. And again, when I think
Nemeth and Tenori and Lundqvist are just giving him so much confidence. And Trouba, who's been a mess in the defensive zone. Yes, he's got good numbers, but defensively, Trouba's awful.
Yeah, okay, but here's the thing. Shesterkin was not really good last year. He had a down. He was really good his first year. Then he had the injury thing or whatever it was. He missed 10 games towards the end. But last year he wasn't great. 2.62 goals against, 914 save percentage. A lot of times young goalies, they're up and down from year to year. That's why I'm kind of, okay, has he been great? Have they handled him right? I don't know. But I'm not ready to write Sorokin off like Phil is. Obviously, he's saying, hey, let's keep Don Beaupre in goal and get rid of Sorokin.
He doesn't think he's going to be the next Dominic Hasek. I don't know.
I don't think he's going to be the next Dominic Hasek either.
I don't think he will be. I think Shesterkin might be, though. Shesterkin is better than Lundqvist so far. Is better than Lundqvist ever was for the Rangers. Lundqvist never put up these numbers.
Wow.
It's true.
Wow.
This is a top 5. He's having a top 5 season ever.
Yes.
Ever.
He's been great this year. Last year he wasn't so good. Sure.
Okay.
Not so good last year.
Sure. We're also talking about what we're like about 50 some odd games through the season. I mean, Jack Campbell was having a fantastic year and he kind of fell off the rails. I'm just saying you could fall off the rails at any time.
You could. And I hope Shesterkin does. I hope he fails miserably. I hope he puts up 800s down the stretch and that the Rangers fall apart and lose 20 out of the next 30 games, allowing the Islanders to get into the playoffs. I hope that's what happens. But right now, he is the best goaltender this year in the league, and no one is close.
I remember Tony Esposito had 15 shutouts his rookie year for Chicago. Next year, not so good. Goaltenders up and down from year to year. It happens. They're a different breed. They just are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, everyone thought Samsonov in Washington, it was Samsonov, Shesterkin, and Sorokin. They said these are the 3 Russians. Who knows who's going to be the best of them? They're all fantastic. And Samsonov pretty much sucks. I mean, he's bad. And maybe it's a Washington system thing. Maybe if they would have kept Mitch Korn and Barry Trotz there, Samsonov would be great. Probably, to be honest.
Yeah, but everybody else would have left the organization.
Well, they probably would have won 2 more cups.
No, they wouldn't.
Oh,
here's the thing.
2, at least 2, maybe 3.
Ownership didn't want them.
Get out. 3 more cups.
Get out. They said, get out.
He's pushing buttons.
I don't care. You got a cup. Get out.
No, they haven't won a playoff series since. And
Samsonov hasn't played well. Do you think maybe if in a trade, right? We don't have another need for a young goalie, but right.
No, and Samsonov's expensive. I don't want to get Samsonov. No, he's expensive.
I mean, he's coming off a not great season. I mean,
you know what?
No, they're not trading. They're not giving up on Samsonov yet, and they shouldn't because he might be good.
I think Holtby, right? If you're thinking about a guy who you maybe need a few year stopgap for, that's the guy that I assume is the hot guy this offseason if you need him for a few years.
He's not really that good either.
Phil, I don't know if you knew this or not, but his last year in Washington, they gave Barry Trotz, he had like a corporate hotel that he was staying at or a corporate apartment. And he got down after they won the Stanley Cup. He goes, you have been evicted. I mean, it was no shot. They didn't want him back. See you later, alligator.
And how has that worked out for them?
Just as good as it's worked out for us. We ain't won shit. Neither team. Nothing. Matter of fact, they've won more than us. I do believe they won a division title. Did they not 1 year?
I think they did. I think that
first how many division titles we won,
and they lost to they blew a 2-0 lead in Game 7 versus the Canes.
How many division titles have we won under Barry Trotz?
Who needs
division titles? Don't matter, Grump. All that matters.
All right. Okay. We've won. What I'm just saying is they don't hang up a banner for Eastern Conference finalist either.
I do. I have it in my bedroom. I have 2 of them.
Sad.
2 of them, as a matter of fact.
That's just sad.
I have them custom made.
You need an intervention. Seriously.
I have them custom made at the same guy who's putting the one together. Hopefully for the these Maple Leaf fans, they just want a series win, and once they do that, they could plan the parade down Bay Street that they got to the second round. So they've got these banners, and I just said, just slap an Isles logo on it. The one that covered the Maple Leaf up, the one that says we made the ECF, and give me 2 of those, one for 1920, one for 2021. I have them hanging over my bed. My wife doesn't like it that much, but they're there.
I'm not even going to touch that. There's so many things I could say right now, but I'm not going to. But I do want to say, TJ, that was just too easy. Honestly, Phil, that was just too easy for me. But I'm going to respect your wife right now, just to let you know. You, not so much, but I'm absolutely going to respect her. TJ, what time is it?
It's time to read the ad, grumpy old man.
I just thought that was a perfect time to bring up the ad.
Great segue.
And today's podcast is brought to you by DraftKings. Hoop fans, the latest offer from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is too good to pass up. I'm talking between the legs, 360 windmill good. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. It's that simple. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you can still take your shot at a big payday. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Basketball Contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at $1 million in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code THPN and bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 years or older. Minimum age and location requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for a full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Void where prohibited. Minimum of $5 deposit. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, call or text TN Redline, which is 1-800-889-9789. In Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. Grumpy.
Woo!
We have a bit of breaking news. Just a bit of breaking news. Andy Strickland, who is he's an NHL insider and he's really good. He is reporting that the Preds are actively shopping Philip Forsberg.
So that means that he must not be planning on signing back in Nashville.
That is correct, which all of a sudden becomes very interesting, right? You think about how many suitors, how many worthwhile suitors are there in the offseason for a guy like Phil Forsberg if he is not intending on returning to Nashville? And this is smart by Nashville. I mean, this is right up Grumpy's alley. Nashville, they're good enough to make the playoffs. They're probably even good enough to win a round, but they're not good enough to get by Calgary, Colorado, and Vegas. They're probably they're not even, I mean, they could probably get past the Minnesota Wild, but they're maybe the 5th or 6th best team there. And Phil Forsberg is going to bring back 2 first-rounders and all kinds of trimmings. But that means that Forsberg does not want to return to Nashville. And they hit a standstill. What teams have the money and make sense aside from the Islanders? The only other one that comes to mind for me really is the LA Kings.
Yeah, I mean, I think
he could legitimately be in play.
I just don't think he'll come here. I just don't think.
Where else? Where else?
Someone else.
The Rangers don't have the money. The Leafs don't have the money. The Flames don't have the money. I mean, not that he's going to go to Canada. The Florida teams don't have the money.
Do the Panthers not have money?
No, they just signed Barkov long term.
Detroit Red Wings have the money.
Oh,
he's going to go to Detroit.
Do you want to compete for a cup? I could say in Detroit, you've got a much higher likelihood of competing for the cup than you do with the Islanders.
Oh man, TJ's all on the Red Wing bandwagon.
The Red Wing, I'm telling you, man.
They don't have an elite goaltender like Ilya Sorokin.
Nedeljkovic, baby. I jumped the gun on Nedeljkovic, but I think he
jumped the gun on Jack Campbell. Jumped the gun on everyone. TJ.
He loved that Jack Campbell.
There it is. There.
He loves Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell blows. Come on. Here's the thing. You know, when TJ was a kid, I bet he had like one of those little red
Jack Campbell bobblehead.
No. One of those little red wagons, put a little wing on the side. He's all in on the Red Wings and Stevie Y. He's all in on them. TJ, when are they going to be competing for the cup? How many years? You'd say 2?
I said 2 years until they're a serious competitor. Next year they're making the playoffs, no doubt in my mind. I don't care how tough that division is. That's a team you watch out for.
I'm gonna tell you what you got to love about TJ. Man, when he goes out on a limb, he's all the way out on it. He's not,
I know the Red Wings.
Listen, I think it's a good.
I knew the Red Wings were trading for Nick Leddy. I know the Red Wings. I own one of their teams in fantasy, Grump. I know everything, the ins and outs, the prospect pool. I know about the Red Wings.
Here's the thing. When TJ goes on, it's not like he's got one hand on the trunk either. He's all the way out, like on the last limb, trying to get that first little bud that comes up in the spring. He's way out. He's all the way out there. I love it.
I could see. Listen, I could see why you'd be saying that, because you look at their closest comparable is probably the Kings, right? The Kings are pretty well into rebuild. The difference is the Kings are getting a ton of help from their holdover guys, right? They're getting a monster season from Kopitar, a monster season from Doughty. They're getting a pretty decent season from Dustin Brown. They had very good veteran players, and Jonathan Quick has returned somewhat to form. The Red Wings, they've got the young guys and not much else. I know Verana's coming back, and Verana's a big piece there, and he should be a big piece going forward, coming off of injury. But I just don't think. I mean, who else is coming? Who else is coming besides for Cedar's going to get better, Raymond's going to get better, but who else is coming?
You're talking about young guys. I know that Albert Johansson is killing it in the Swedish Elite League, has been the last 2 years. Williander is pretty good. Niederback's pretty good. They've got a lot of good prospects. They've got a lot of young. I mean, you talk about a team that went almost all European. They're a team that went pretty much all European. And again, like the biggest issue for them is maybe goaltender, but that's why they draft Kostas. But again, you're talking draft picks.
Here's the thing about Detroit. The pieces that are hard to get are the young pieces that they have. The veteran types, the glue guys, they're easy to find. There's a million of them out there. A million.
Let me ask you this too. Zadina.
Sure. Yes. The veteran glue guys, the Komarovs, yes. But what I'm saying is with the Kings, these aren't just glue guys. I mean, Kopitar is still a high-end player. Doughty is a high-end player. These are the guys who are doing most of the heavy lifting for the Kings this year.
And they're the only 4 guys who were over the age of 30 on the whole roster.
Arvidsson is how old? 29?
Yeah.
Arvidsson's playing great. He's been a great pickup.
Yeah, that was a really good. And they gave up nothing to get him.
Second and a third.
We couldn't have done that. Not possible.
We should have done that. We should have done that. I mean,
that's why when you say, "Oh, we do this in the offseason, lose big off," okay, you had opportunities the last number of years. You've done nothing.
Well, I mean, listen, the choice that they made in the offseason was that they wanted Kyle Palmieri to be that right wing.
Because
they didn't want it to be Jordan Eberle. And if you have the choice of signing Kyle Palmieri, who had a very good playoffs for you, versus trading a second and a third after already having to cap dump Ladd with assets, and now you're digging into, years later for Arvidsson, well, they wanted to take Palmieri for free as opposed to trading a couple picks for Arvidsson, who's the unknown quantity, if you will, also coming off of a career poor year. He only had 10 goals last year. So they went with Palmieri. I think they've handled Palmieri and he struggled and he was hurt, but I think they did a tremendous disservice to him and to the entire team by moving Bailey to the top line after game 4. I know you guys were all over that. The guy's been playing terrible. Barry called them out after the Blackhawks game, which is the game they won, that I have to break up the second line because their analytics are shit. Why the hell is he going to the first line then if his analytics are shit? And he shouldn't have. Really, he should go to the fourth line for Matt Martin, and Matt Martin should be sitting in the press box, and Bailey should be playing 9 minutes a night. That's really at the point of his career where he is. I wouldn't sit him at this point, though. If you're planning on moving him in the summer and moving him painlessly, you can't just sit Bailey. Who's going to take him then?
Maybe we get Tony Soprano out there. Just, I don't know, find himself in a dump in Jersey somewhere. I mean, what the heck? That's where we picked up Kyle Palmieri and Andy Green anyway.
I think Palmieri is much better still than the season he's having. I don't think he's the 4-goal-in-4 game guy. I don't think he's the 1-goal-in-29 game guy. Somewhere very in between. I still think he's got 20 to 25 goals in him in a regular season, playing in a position where he could succeed. And they don't use him properly on the power play, which is where he got tons of production from.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think?
He's an F minus. His nickname is F minus for a reason, Phil.
What do you think you'd have to give up for a guy like Forsberg? When I look at Detroit, I think
you cannot trade for him. You can't trade.
No, the Islanders can't trade for him. Someone's going to trade for him. Maybe Colorado.
And then, okay.
Someone's going to trade 2 first-round picks. I mean, the closest comparable I could think of is it's really Mark Stone and Matt Duchene, right? Mark Stone went for a recent 16 overall pick who they were very high on, a second rounder, a roster player. And then Duchene went for 2 first-round picks in a season where Duchene was having a crazy year. So if you look at those as the 2 most recent comparables of big, juicy asset moved at the trade deadline, it's going to be your best prospect and a high pick or 2 first-round picks. That's what I think it's going to be. And he's not necessarily going to be moved to a team that's going to be able to re-sign him, right? If you end up moving him, let's say the Toronto Maple Leafs decide to push all their chips to the middle and say, we're going to give you a first and our 3 best prospects, and you're going to retain half his salary, and we're going to trade for him, which they can do now because Muzzin's on LTIR, and maybe they do that. They can't re-sign him. So now the question becomes, who are the potential suitors for Forsberg? You know the Islanders are going to be in on him. What's he worth? Do you want to pay him? That's the question now.
Do you see Anaheim going after a guy? Like, I'm thinking about teams with cap space, right? Rickard Rakell, his contract expires at the end of this offseason.
They could, but I mean, they've got a decision to make on Rakell. Apparently, they're trying to get Hampus Lindholm to re-up, and he's going to be expensive as a top pair 23-minute defenseman. I don't know what their cap space situation looks like if they re-sign Rakell and Lindholm. and then hope to have some room for Zegras, who's going to be up in a year or 2 years from now. So they have to budget their dollars carefully. But you're talking about a guy who on the open market is $9 million easy, maybe even 10.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing. You should, if the Islanders have the ability to get a guy like that, you talk about doing a bold move, bringing in a big name guy. If you're able to sign him in the offseason,
Grumpy doesn't like it.
They're not. Yeah, he's just
Grumpy
not
doesn't
coming.
like it.
He's just not
there's
coming.
a lot more
He's just
teams
not
that have
coming.
the ability
Okay.
to get a guy like him than just us.
Let's say you
I
bring.
can't think of many. I honestly can't. If you look at all the contenders, Boston doesn't have the space to do it. The Rangers don't have the space to do it. You go through all the playoff teams this year.
But Bergeron, they say this could be Bergeron's last year. So
they're going to replace their best center with a $9 million winger. They don't need a winger.
I'm just saying that you said they don't have money. They're going to have money. I feel they will have money. I think you're going to see. I don't think Boston's that good. I'm not saying he's going to Boston, but there are ways to. The smart teams are able to find salary cap money. We're just not able to do it, but most of the smart teams are. You got
to find $10 million. That doesn't just show up under the
mattress. But here's the thing: not every team is able to pay $10 million, and I just can't see where we're a destination for anyone. I just can't.
Now let me ask you that, Grumpy. Is that serious question? Is that because you are so stuck in the idea of this is the Islanders of the old? They've never signed a big name free agent, so we could never be a destination for any free agent? Is that just because of past? You're looking at the past results and thinking that's indicative of the future.
Kind of a combination, but also we still have the glut of guys who are top 6 players to sign to long-term deals that we have to move some of those out.
So let's go through them.
Josh Bailey and Kyle Palmieri are both going to be moved. We read it earlier on this podcast, Grump. They are shoo-ins.
I don't think Kyle Palmieri is going to be moved, but if Lou wants to make that kind of bold decision, and if he, in speaking with Forsberg's camp, and listen, Forsberg is going to have his opinion on the Islanders more because he was with Trotz, I think, for 2 years in Nashville, more so than the destination. He either loved him or he hated him. I don't know if there's necessarily an in-between there, but he probably has a good idea as to what it's like to play for Trotz and if he wants to. But if they get the indication from the Forsberg camp that, 7 years, $70 million, we're going to lock this thing up, that's when you see Bailey get moved.
I just think there's so much junk on our roster signed to long-term deals.
Let's go through it. Who? You got Bailey?
Lee.
Okay, 2.
Nelson.
Nelson's not junk.
Come on. I'd say you have an easier argument to say that junk next year and going forward will be Jean-Gabriel Pageau than Brock Nelson.
Okay. All right. No,
I don't think either of them are junk. But
I think you're going to start to see. We talk about the decline of older players at a quick level. I think Jean-Gabriel.
They're all in their 30s.
They're
all in their 30s. Body. Not getting better in your 30s.
I don't think Pageau's junk. I think he's played better of late. I think he had a very, very sloppy, slow start like most of the team. I think he could rebound from this next year. I don't think he's a 50-point player. Never was a 50-point player. 40 points, plays a good two-way game, the kind of guy that you need to have in the playoffs if you want to go deep. That's what I think Pageau is, and that's what I think he could ultimately be next year. Nelson's not junk. He's a $6 million 2C who's money in the bank for 25 goals every year. I mean, you're not if Radu gave you that kind of production every year.
No.
I hit a nerve. Brock Nelson is good, Grumpy. Brock Nelson's not
He's
junk.
a good player.
We can't play Montreal and Arizona every night.
And Seattle.
And Seattle, the only teams he
Carolina, Minnesota, Calgary, Las Vegas.
He scored 10 goals against the weak-ass teams in the league out of his 18 in 5 games.
He was the only guy who showed up on opening night against Jacob Markstrom, who's probably the best goalie in the West this year, and was keeping us in that game against Calgary.
He's soft. He must have been in, I don't know what category you had him in.
Weak teams. He ranks 4th in goal scoring for the playoffs in the Barry Trotz era.
Well, he don't need to worry about that. We're not going back to the playoffs anytime soon. So we don't even need to worry about that stat.
When we have Forsberg and Barzal together, we don't need any roads where we're going, Grump.
So where are you going to put
Anders Lee? Even roads, Grumpy.
Where are you going to put Anders Lee? Your $7 million a year left wing.
I mean, all right. So visualize it like this: you've moved Bailey to Arizona, and Arizona is going to want a guy like Bailey, right? Comes at a 30% discount. They need to fill $32 million in cap space to hit the cap floor. This guy's only owed $3.5 million on 5. They just saved $1.5 million. That's great. They'll probably take him for free, as a matter of fact. I don't think we'll need to send a second-round pick. He's an asset to a team like Arizona. And then the next year, they could probably trade him for like a 4th-round pick or something like that at the deadline. So your top line is now Forsberg.
Just don't say back to us. Just don't say back to the
back to us for the playoff run, because there is no Bailey like a playoff Bailey. But you've got Forsberg, Barzal, and who do you want on that right wing?
I want Wahlstrom.
All right, so you got Forsberg, Barzal, Wahlstrom. He plays his off wing, by the way, kind of like Panarin, where he, for that one timer. So Forsberg plays. I mean, he plays the left wing, even though he's a righty. Your second line is, I guess, Lee and Nelson probably doesn't work very well.
I want Bellows on that second line.
To me, the problem with Bellows, and I don't hate him, and I don't think he sucks. Like you guys have said many times, he's not a bottom 6 player because he's not a great forechecker. He's not a great back checker. He's not a penalty killer. So you want to put him in the top 6 because he's got some decent skill. To me, he doesn't have enough skill to be a top 6 player on a playoff contender. He just doesn't. He's got enough skill that if you put him on Arizona and put him in their top 6, he'll probably score 18 goals and get 20 assists. Sure. But on a contender, do you see a guy like that who's just very slow and doesn't do anything really special per se? Beauvillier's having a terrible year, but he forechecks like an animal. He's always been a good two-way player. He's always showed up in the playoffs. We know that. Penalty kill. I mean, to me, he doesn't have as many tools as a guy like Bo, who's not a high-end top 6 player, but does enough where you can justify having him in that spot. Bellows is pretty much one-dimensional to me.
Yeah, he's a goal scorer. That's right. But here's the
3
thing.
goals in 23 games. What do you mean he's a goal scorer?
Well, yeah, but what did he get? What did he get? 8 minutes a night? I mean, come on.
He played 14 and a half minutes last night. Everyone was scoring goals last night aside from Bellows. It's not like he hasn't.
Well,
he's been playing on the second line the past 3 nights.
He's been throwing the body.
Bellows' stats on the left wing: 20 games played, 3 goals, 8 assists, +5.
And that's a goal scorer.
The guy is.
He probably got the
he shoots the puck, but again, you're talking about a guy. What? So he's going to scratch and claw for 19 goals.
We don't have a spot for a guy like Kiefer Bellows because we have Anders Lee who fills that void. You could get a guy like Kiefer Bellows so much cheaper, and a guy who's got more upside going forward than Anders Lee. I did want to bring up one point though. You said that the Arizona Coyotes were going to look for Josh Bailey because it was going to be cheaper for him. Are you trying to tell me that the Arizona Coyotes playing in front of a packed 5,000 a night might be in financial strife, Phil?
I mean, they are.
I was hoping we could opine a little bit about how much of a joke it is that they're sort of 5,000 fans.
How does a team that's run by the league have financial difficulties? Doesn't that, it's like, would you want them managing your taxes? I probably wouldn't.
I mean, weren't they late on a property tax bill or something like that?
Yes, amazing. They were threatened with eviction if they didn't pay. They were 2 months behind. I'm like, dude, I mean, come on, Bettman, write a check. You own that team.
Okay, so your second line in this scenario, you go Beauvillier, and hopefully he rebounds to what he was and what he should be with Nelson, and on the right wing, I guess you go with.
Go ahead, say Bellows. Just say it.
Bellows, fine.
Thank you.
Fine. Fine. I'll give it to you. Bellows, Nelson, Beauvillier. You try it out. Fine. And if it doesn't work, then you make a deal at the deadline next year and you figure it out. Third line, Lee, Pajot, Palmieri. I think it could work.
That's the most expensive third line in all of hockey. You know, we've talked about the best third line in all
hockey.
Sure,
but they have the money to do it. The players are here. You're not moving these players. These players can't be moved. Maybe the next year you can move them. You just can't move them. They're here. You just have to accept the fact that no one is taking Anders Lee, and they're not moving Anders Lee, and no one is taking Kyle Palmieri, and they're not moving Kyle Palmieri. These players are simply going to be here. We have to live within reality here.
Well, here's the thing. I've been watching some old Olympic stuff in the last couple of weeks. I think we could go Luli, Palmieri, and Lee, and put them on long-term injury for a couple of years. Let them ride the bus like they did with Andrew Ladd.
How many times in a row are you going to have to do that, Grumpy? How is that going to?
He'd never recover from that broken kneecap Get that kid out of college, out of jail, wherever he is, Sean Eckhart.
Listen, we need Andrew Ladd to play next year so we get our 3rd round pick back. We just need him to play 1 game. That's all we need.
He will. He'll play.
He'll play. No, I know. The only way they don't is if Arizona decides to buy him out. But I don't think they're going to spend $4 million to buy a 3rd round draft pick.
They can't even pay their taxes. They can't even pay their taxes.
I would be very surprised if they did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess you go with, you Lee, Pajot, Palmieri. And then once you get Forsberg back, maybe you entice Parise to come back and play 4th line with Cizikas and right wing. I don't know. Throw Holmstrom there for all I care.
Well, Holmstrom,
the elite.
Put Holmstrom's picture up. Where's Holmstrom's picture, TJ?
Okay. We do need to see towards the tail end of this year, Simon Holmstrom at the NHL level to see what he's got, right? He's still young, but I want to start seeing what these younger players have and legitimate chances. I don't want to see a guy like Otto Koivula get 9 minutes or 8 minutes a night. I want to see guys like Simon Holmstrom, your Otto Koivulas, your Grant Hutton with major minutes to see what they can do when kind of thrown to the tough waters. We need to see what we have going forward, who could be a part of the solution, who is definitely not.
I'm definitely interested in seeing Josh Bailey 2.0. Play when the season is totally done. Can you put his picture up, DJ?
I'm pulling up the Banjo Boy from because
what takes so long? Why is it not up there?
Because I recently searched it and I'll get it.
The 3rd time I brought up this podcast, man. You should be ready for that.
Oh man, what can I?
Phil's going to be on there. He's like a girl having a school. Believe me, I know which one he picked for Simon Holmstrom. That much I can tell you.
What?
In the there's Simon Holmstrom. There he is.
The Banjo Boy from Deliverance.
And put his Islander picture up. You got that too?
Oh, Jesus, give me a second.
Put them up side by side because I'm going to tell you what.
We have to do this every single time we have a guest on to see like, look at this.
Phil's been gushing over him. I want him to see what you're really looking at. Give him a little perspective. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Grumpy. I'll pull that up, Grumpy old man. Don't you worry about it.
Just leave that one up for now. I like that picture. Oh, there it is.
There we go. And we
Same
can go
thing.
flip back.
He's a teenager. He's a child.
Same guy, same one.
He's just saying because he's a blonde-haired kid with a flat, or I don't even know how to describe his face. I don't even know, Grumpy. Maybe a little bit.
He's Banjo Boy. That's what he is.
Fair enough.
Go ahead. Next topic.
As long as Banjo Boy scores, that's all I care about.
Do we care about any of the comments today?
Well, there's another item I want to talk about. I do care about the comments, Grump. We do.
I care about the people. I know you don't, but I do.
Oh God gracious. I do care about the people.
I'm here for the people.
Gosh. It's good conversation, right? I don't want to interrupt good conversation. I want to talk about
Phil's here.
Yeah, I know Phil's here. But I want to talk about
missed it, Phil. He didn't get it. It was so easy.
I want to talk, Grumpy, about Barry Trotz, the system, and do we think that this team can we reasonably put that this team will be able to have a bounce back into playoff success or playoff runs like we've had in the past? I mean, how much of serious movement do we need to see in order to have this team be a playoff competitor? Could we realistically just say, Phil, that, hey, all we got to do is we've got to replace Chara and Green, and then, we'll sign back Parise after we trade him away if he wants to sign back to another 1-year extension, and we just let Cal Clutterbuck, but maybe we move a guy like Bailey off, and that's all that needs to be done, and we're ready to be competitors again.
Well, not all that. You need to be able to deliver an impact forward.
Like so let's assume we get a guy like Forsberg. Best case scenario, we sign.
That's best case. That's the best case.
And then Bailey's gone. Does that make us a playoff contender, or we're going to be in the Stanley Cup contender?
I would say it depends on who's your second left defenseman. My assumption now is that your D is Pelech up top. I think we're all fine with that. No?
I'm just saying, and let's assume we sign back a Mark Giordano. Let's assume we go after a Mark Giordano.
Another guy in his freaking 40s?
What fits Lou Lamoriello's MO?
Giordano is still very good.
Giordano.
He's 37. He's 37, but he's a very good 37.
But what fits his MO? That's all I'm saying. It fits his MO. So I'm like,
Giordano's not signing here. I don't think he's coming here.
Okay. I'm just
no one comes here. No one comes here.
Giordano's not coming here. He's going to get. He's kind of. He could get a Ryan Suter contract probably 4 years, $4 million. Wow. He's that good. He's just a very good player. I wouldn't be surprised if someone gave him a term like that. I wouldn't want to be the team that does it. He'll probably be good next year because he's really good this year. Curious to see what the Kraken get for him if they end up moving their captain. But if you have Pelech, assuming you could elevate Dobson to the second pair and give him a competent option next to him. Now, who's that going to be, right? We talked about trading Mayfield. Are you trading Mayfield and then using a first-round pick you get for him to trade for a left-handed defenseman somewhere? You know, it doesn't need to be Chychrun, but it just needs to be someone who's good, who could skate, push the pace, defend well. I mean, not get caught.
See, that's not Chychrun.
Chychrun has always been a good defensive defenseman. He has been. His defensive impacts have always been very, very good.
Okay.
And he also has a hell of a shot.
I don't need you to break out your slide rule. I just know when I watch him on the ice. That's all I say. He doesn't play any defense.
You get Dobson with a good 2 pair, and then you go with a third pair, assuming Mayfield's still here, of Mayfield Salo, right? So you're really trying to solve because Salo at 24, I think he'll be on the team. I'd have a hard time believing they're just going to keep him down there at that age. I think you got Mayfield Salo as your bottom pair. You need to solve for a good partner with Dobson, and you need to get an impact forward. I think with moving Bailey, getting an impact forward, and getting a very good partner for Dobson, that's a playoff team. Can they compete for a cup? Well, this team, anytime they get into the playoffs, they are a danger to compete for a cup because of their goaltending and because of their system. So, yes, I believe that if this team makes the right moves to be able to get back into the playoffs, then there is no better coach to have to get them to the cup than Barry Trotz.
Well, the thing is, I know that the recent success has branded Barry Trotz as a good playoff caliber coach. He just historically, before the Islanders, it's not been the case. And I know they won the one cup in Washington, but you look at his playoff misfortunes in Nashville for many, many years. And even before that last year in Washington, he was a abject failure in playoff.
Abject failure because he kept having to go against Crosby. You could call him an abject failure here, but he lost twice to the best team in the Cap era. That's just a fact.
Would you say that he
didn't have the horses?
Would you say that last year he was fortunate when we played Tristan Jarry, who had one of the worst playoff series as goalie in recent memory, and then he played a guy who was on a career-ending hip injury that he tried to come back from after surgery? I mean, like in Tuukka Rask. Would you say that we were fortunate the last two playoff series last year? I would.
Yeah, Phil.
Oh, I think that we were just as fortunate as Washington to get Tuukka Rask, and for some reason, I don't know, maybe Washington was just awful. I didn't think they were awful last year, but they got dismantled by Boston in 5. Everyone likes to bring that one up, right? Okay, so the Jarry thing, right? Oh, well, don't give him any credit because Jarry sucked. Yeah, Jarry sucked, but they had to cash in on their opportunities ultimately, and they scored a ton of goals in that series. Fine. So move that one aside. Oh, well, they got Tuukka Rask, and Tuukka Rask sucks. Okay, then explain how Boston absolutely picked Washington apart in the first round.
The turning
that was not a dud team. Yes, Brandon Carlo went down.
Absolutely. That was the end of Boston. When he got hurt, that was it for them. That was the turning point of the series. Even more than Rask. It was Carlo.
They're the only team that actually put up a real fight against Tampa. Carolina lost in 5. Florida took them to 6. And they were leaking every game. Tampa was killing them. Outside of one game, right? 5 of those games, they held Tampa to 2 or fewer goals. It was a close series. You could dismiss it as they were toying with us or whatever. But the bottom line is, and in the Stanley Cup, they just thoroughly dispatched of Montreal.
We
beat Boston. We beat Boston in 6, who dismantled the Capitals, and we took Tampa as far as you can possibly go when no other team even came close against them.
We were never going to beat Tampa. We scored 11 goals in 7 games. 11-7. That's not enough to win any 7-game playoff series. Just not good enough. Then you're right. I think they just, score a goal on the Islanders, game's over. They ain't coming back.
Except for Game 6 where they went up 2-0 and then the Islanders came back.
Yeah, and then they said, series is over.
Game 6 is a home one for us. I mean,
after winning 8-0, they go up there, they get a 2-0 lead. This one's over. They took their foot off the gas and they got beat. And then Josh Bailey did his best Josh Bailey impersonation, not marking the guy, coming down shorthanded, bang, goal. That's it. All over but the shouting. They just played dump. They just played get to the red line, dump it in for the rest of the game.
Sure, but to say that there's some other head coach that would have taken them farther than Barry Trotz, I don't believe it. The Jack Adams Award winner Brindamore lost to them in 5.
I don't think Carolina was ready to win. Now, here's the thing: if we play Carolina, we're getting swept. Swept.
Well,
Matter of fact, you don't even need a broom. Just blow on them out the door. Don't even need a broom.
let me ask it to you like this too. We talk about players who are, past their prime and take steps backward. The biggest issue for this team has always been offensive production. Never been goaltending, never been defense under Barry Trotz. I mean, we've struggled a little bit defense earlier on in the season, and even with two, guys well past their peak in Green and Chara, we still have been if you look at it across the league, we've still been a very, very good defensive team. And you look at some teams that hemorrhage chances, but offense has always been a struggle for us. Now, when you look at the team as currently constituted, and let's assume best case scenario, you get rid of a guy like Josh Bailey, and now you bring in a guy like Forsberg. I just want to look at the roster and say who could take a step forward, who takes a step back. I think that Matt Barzal is what he is. I don't foresee him elevating his game to a new level. I don't see him taking a step back. I just think he is what he is.
You don't think with a guy like Forsberg on his line, he's good for 55, 60 assists?
I don't think. Point production may be up a bit if he's playing with a competent winger. I'm just saying regarding his play on the ice. I don't think his play on the ice is going to take a jump, and I don't think a guy. When we talk about, do you think Matt Barzal's play on the ice is going to take a step forward?
It's not. I think his play is excellent. I just think by virtue of the fact that you have a guy who's one of the more prolific scorers in the game playing with him, those chances are going to go in more. I think that's the issue, right? Eberle's a good player, not a great player. How many goalless streaks did Eberle go through, right? We talk about Palmieri and his, 3 goals in his first 32 games, right? The year Eberle signed his extension, he had 3 goals in his first 32 games. He's as streaky as they come, right? We just saw Eberle went on a 22-game goalless streak that was snapped like last week. So that's one player he's been dealing with. And the other player is Anders Lee, who just can't keep up with him at this point. He's a good net front guy. He could score 25 goals. They're not going to be particularly pretty, but you get a guy who, right, Barzal, the biggest area in his production that dipped from year 1 to years 2, 3, 4, and 5 that he's in right now is power play is the biggest. He had 27 power play points. Why? Because he played on a unit with John Tavares, and John Tavares is an elite high-end talent, and he was able to he scored 38 goals, and he's a goal scorer. So I think you give him a guy like Forsberg, nothing about his game needs to change. He's just, by definition, he should have more production, and that will lead to more goals for the team.
I think again, play on the ice is going to stay similar to the exact same. I think he's an excellent player. Goal production, assist production will increase, as will adding a guy like Forsberg. But when I start looking at other members of the team as well, right? When I say, okay, what do we expect of Kyle Palmieri? Do I expect him to take big steps forward? Do I expect him to remain relatively the same? Or do I expect him now at the age of 32 years old to take a step? Or is he 32 or 31?
He's 31. He just turned 31 a week ago.
Okay. So 31 years old, going to be 31, 32 next year. Do I expect him to take a step forward, stay the same, or take a step back? I think he kind of is what he is. I'm expecting him to stay the same.
I would expect him to be better next year than he was this year by virtue of the fact that he has been historically awful this year. Production-wise, his play on the ice in terms of just, pure underlying numbers and metrics aren't bad. He just wasn't finishing up until recently. I think he could give you 18 to 24 goals as opposed to this year where he's probably going to finish with like 11 or 12. And he missed like 15 games this year or something like that. I think you can see an uptick in his production. I think you can see an uptick in Pajot's production. I think you're almost certainly going to see an uptick in Beauvillier's production. He's having a career worst year. Nelson is going to tick down because he's not going to shoot 20% and play at a 40-goal pace probably ever again. It's a bit of an outlier year for him personally. But I think most of these forwards, the exceptions to that, I think, are Bailey is one. And I think Matt Martin's another because he's just completely cooked. I think Cizikas, we rag on that contract. I think Cizikas would be visually better looking if he had a left winger who could actually play. I think the biggest detriment to that fourth line is really Matt Martin because he's got a debilitating injury that they've been very open about with the media. He literally cannot play. It's a 2-person line. Cal's been fine this year. And when I say fine, he's not good, but he's fine. He's okay.
Then how does Barry put him on the ice every night?
My hands are up. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, that's like, dude, what are you doing?
This has been an incredibly puzzling year. I mean, the only working theory I have is that there must be some sort of internal rift this year between Barry and Lou that just traces back to camp, traces back to the Gustafsson decision where maybe Barry wanted to keep Gustafsson and Lou didn't because he wanted to keep Chara. And then all of a sudden you have a Barry favorite who the fans hated. We have Leo Komarov who ends up on waivers. And I'm sure when Leo Komarov ended up going to the train station or whatever, or the airport, and Lou called him, I'm sure that was Barry giving him the phone to call him because he probably wanted him back. That's my working theory. So now all of a sudden you lose Leo Komarov, right? And you have another Euro who went back home. Timoshov's like, screw this, I'm not staying in Bridgeport, I'm going home, right? And now all of a sudden you have a problem with the AHL team. No one's going there. And Golashev's not happy in the AHL. And Lou's like, all right, Golashev, I'm bringing you up to the NHL roster. And I think that was Barry thumbing his nose at Lou, not putting him in. Lou put him on the roster, and I think Barry's just like, fuck you.
Well, you know what then? You know what, Barry?
And I think this is a part of the season, I think, and again, this is just like a fan theory and could just be fan fiction, but I think that, Barry was probably not happy with the decision with what he left with him with at left D, because he liked Nick Leddy, and understandably Leddy needed to be traded, but he did not replace Leddy with someone who does what Leddy does in terms of his skating ability. He took away Leo Komarov, and the rest of it has just been a tug of war that has led to just some really peculiar roster decisions, which might just be internal bickering.
If that's the case, I would have fired Barry already. A coach cannot be
which means I'm probably wrong, which means I'm probably dead wrong.
Well, I'm sure you're wrong, but hey, this is the type of show that you come on when you want to spout those theories, because we'll run with them for weeks.
Let's run with it. I've got the whole board. I've connected all the dots, and it all traces back to Leo Komarov.
You got like the little line, the little yarn.
I've got the faces on it. I mean, they had 3 contract terminations in the first 6 weeks. That's just bizarre. That doesn't typically happen in the NHL, right? And then and I'm sure the Zarnik decision was probably some weird conversation where it's like, how many players are we going to lose to waivers and to contract terminations to accommodate Ross Johnston, right? Oh, you want Ross on a 4-year deal? Well, go to hell. I'm just going to continue rolling out Matt Martin. So there you go, Lou. I'm going to roll out Martin. I know you're trying to force Ross on me, but no, it's going to be Martin on the 4th line. But yeah, Martin can't play. He just can't. But he's not going to bounce. I mean, we got here because we're talking about who could bounce back. Martin can't bounce back, and I don't think Bailey could bounce back either, which is why he needs to be gone.
I think that, and again, to get back on, I'll let you make your comment, and I'll get back on the questions I have.
For me, Barry's biggest issue is that he's a slave to his system. I think that's the biggest problem that he has. He is not capable of deviating from his system. I've always felt that's his main drawback. It's why he can get out-coached. In the playoffs, he can get out-coached. Somebody doesn't change, he's not capable of adjusting. I've never seen it in his whole career. Never.
I mean, listen, he openly admitted that he has relied on veterans who he have delivered him wins in the past. He's been open about this. And up until recently, he's been sticking with it, and now he's finally benching Andy Green in favor of a player who's not particularly good, and really they should waive Aho and have Salo in that position because Salo is the future guy there. But regardless, I mean, he's deviating from what you would call the Barry script by scratching Green 5 games in a row right now.
Okay, but he plays Josh Bailey every freaking night.
You have to play Josh Bailey. If you want to get rid of Josh Bailey at this point, you have to play him. You can't sit him.
Sit him on the bench. Zach Parise had a market. He had a market at the end of the year. It was us. But I mean,
Parise was still good. Parise was still a good player. Bailey sucks.
He was a healthy scratch. He was a healthy scratch the last 10 games of the year for Minnesota last year.
It wasn't the last 10 games. It was in the middle. It was after he didn't get off the ice because he tried to feed someone for a hat trick on an empty net goal. So Everson sat him for a few games. So
when guys insubordinate, you bench his ass, right? That's what you should do because that works. It does work. It gets a guy motivated.
Parise was never cooked, though. No one said that Parise's done. Him and Everson were just oil and water. It just didn't work. I mean, you could clearly see. Watch Zach Parise play hockey and watch Josh Bailey play hockey right now. It's a different product.
I can't watch Josh Bailey play hockey. I don't even think what he does. I don't even think you can call it playing hockey anymore.
I don't know what it is.
He's a disaster. But I'm just saying, you see, if a coach is insubordinate, and like I said, like you mentioned earlier, we're going to post this all over the place, how, there was a rift between Lou and Barry. I love that. If that's the case, you know what? Barry, maybe you need to sit down. Maybe we're going to demote you for a while. Let Lane Lambert coach because the young guys really seem to produce for him when he was behind
your fake theory. There were no young guys. Wallstrom didn't even play. Wallstrom was in COVID protocol.
Aho did. They look good. Dobson.
Aho didn't play. Aho didn't play.
Yes, he did. When Lambert was coaching, he absolutely did. When Lambert
Aho
was coaching,
did not play for Lambert. Salo did.
Oh, yeah, Salo didn't look so good. Dobson
because he didn't play him. Dobson, first of all, Kiefer Bellows' best game of his career was with Barry behind the bench in Buffalo. He played him like 18 minutes because they didn't have Beauvillier, they didn't have Wallstrom, they had all these guys in COVID protocol. So they gave Bellows like 18 minutes, and the guy looked like a superstar for that one night. That was with Barry behind the bench. Salo got 11 minutes twice under Lambert. Under Barry, his lowest minute total was like 16 minutes or something like that. Lambert did not play Salo. So when you're saying the young guys played well under Lambert, you're talking about Bellows, who had 2 power play assists. Wallstrom wasn't even there with the exception of one game versus Washington where no one produced because they got shut out and they all looked horrible. This is your fan fiction that you invented that all the young guys...
My nickname isn't Phil's fiction. That's not my nickname. That's your nickname. You want to sell your little fiction, that's fine. We're willing to help you with that. But
I don't think Dobson looked any better under Lambert than he does under Trotz.
I see now. I totally disagree with you. He was dynamic when Lambert was because Lambert, I think, gives him a little bit of rope. He gives the younger guys the rope. Where Barry, he's got that choker chain on him all the time.
It's like
the coach who's working for
Jabba the Hutt.
The coach who followed Barry from Washington to the island, who is a student of Barry Trotz.
Mm-hmm. Same system.
Deviated from Barry's plan.
I'm just saying.
And gave Dobson all this room. The reason Dobson scored the goal in overtime is because Lambert was behind the bench.
Phil
and the reason why Dobson didn't score the goal in overtime wasn't because Beauvillier didn't see him wide open and had his head up his ass, but it was because Barry was holding him back.
Phil, listen to me now. Lane Lambert is not Barry Trotz's clone. Yes, it's the same system, but I feel
he has hair.
He has hair,
nice hair.
And he believes in younger players. He believes younger players should play. I bet you see them. Hey, Barry, play the young guy. No. We're going to play Anders Lee. Josh Bailey, put him back out there in a power play. No. Sorry.
He played Chara twice for 22 minutes.
And
2 of Chara's 4 highest time on ice games are under Lane Lambert.
There you go, right there. Look at that.
Is that what you're looking for, Grumpy?
That's it. There's Barry Trotz on the left, and he's got that could be it's Matt Barzell probably right there, the prettiest guy in the Islanders. He's got her on a chain. Good wiggle tongue at her.
Every time Matt Barzal scores, Paige is always like, Matt Barzal scored. She loves herself some Matt Barzal, Grumpy.
Yeah. Well, maybe I think it's actually good for TJ's marriage that Barry coach because there's not a whole lot of screen time for Matt Barzell after scoring goals.
I hear you.
She just gets a little.
I think you made it up in your head. Wallstrom wasn't even there, and when he was there, he wasn't doing anything in that Washington game. Salo got no minutes. Dobson was exactly the same Dobson that he always is. Aho didn't play. He did not play those games.
Absolutely did.
No, he didn't.
I don't think he did.
So I want you to check your facts. He did.
I don't think he played.
From the Vegas game until where he only came in because Salo was in COVID, up until when they started scratching Andy Green, Aho did not play.
Aho looked good. He looked very good.
He didn't play for Lambert.
I like
that's how he looked good. He didn't play any game action, right, Grumpy?
It doesn't matter.
Bellows looked munching on his hot dog in the press.
Dobson looked great. I'm just telling you, they look great.
The young guys, Bellows and Dobson, who
when was Trotz out? The last game he played, Grumpy, was
the last time I was happy. It was the last time I was happy.
No, Grumpy, he didn't play. Vegas was the last game he played, and then he didn't play again until Buffalo in February 15th. I don't think he played under him. I think it was Salo, Grump.
It was Salo, and he didn't play him. He played him 11 minutes because he needed Chara on the ice for half the game. He put Chara out in a tie game versus Edmonton with Andy Green with under a minute left.
Ooh. I think that, and again, I want to get kind of back to the point that encompasses it. I think that
Brock could be better.
Brock Nelson can take a step forward. I think he is what he is. He's probably taking steps backwards. He's 30 years old, 31, 32. He's taking steps backwards. Josh Bailey in this ideal scenario is not there. Anders Lee will continue to take steps backwards. Not very mobile, had knee surgeries before in the past. He'll be 32 years old next year. I don't see him taking a step forward. Jean-Gabriel Pageau, I don't think there's any way he takes a step forward. or
From this season,
back to fire. Yeah, correct.
I think he can. I think he could produce more next year than he did this year.
He's got 15 points in 44 games. What is he on pace to hit about?
27
points as a guy who's now going to be entering his 30s and a guy who's played a lot of tough, hard miles. I'm not sure.
My concern with JG Pajot is he hasn't skated the same this year at all.
Yep.
You're seeing more of it lately, though. You're definitely seeing more of it lately.
Not really. I think his skating. All right, let's say he's improved.
Early on, it wasn't there. But
I just don't see the skating. I mean, he looked just like Parise has looked this year in attacking the zone, just like a whirling dervish. That's what he looked like his 2 years with the Islanders. It doesn't look like that at all this year. Maybe it's a scheme thing. I don't know. But I just think his skating is taking a big step back. Maybe he's hurt. I don't know. Maybe he's still hurt from the offseason. Who knows? Could be a lot of reasons.
Cizikas at 31 next year is not taking a step forward. I mean, he's on the downside.
I honestly think Cizikas could produce more if they got him a better line mate or better line mates. I don't look at Cizikas' game and say, oh wow, Cizikas is completely washed and cooked, and why is he not scoring? Well, who's passing him the puck? He has no one to pass him the puck on that line. You get him decent wingers, and Casey, I mean, he's scored 20 in a season, he scored 14 in a season. He could finish if he has people who are, helping facilitate that. But I don't look at him and say he doesn't look slow. He's still good. He's still a good part of a very good penalty kill unit. He still wins faceoffs. I think he's a perfectly fine top third of the league fourth liner next year.
Does Barry go away from a guy like Matt Martin? Hasn't shown the want or the ability to do so yet this year. Are we going to see Matt Martin rolled out there game in and game out next year?
I think Matt Martin might go away from Matt Martin. I don't know if he's going to play. I don't know if he's capable of playing next year or if he's going to want to go through this grind again. He doesn't need $1.5 million, first of all. And second of all, he's got 1,000,001 other ways to make up that money if he wants to. It's not a money thing for him.
He didn't need the $1.5 million this year either.
He can go ask his father-in-law for a job.
Exactly. No, I honestly don't know that he's going to be on the team. I mean, no one thought that in year 3 they were going to waive Leo Komarov. Put it this way: if Lou doesn't want him on the team and he wants to replace him, he'll waive him, and Martin just won't show up to Bridgeport, and that's just going to be the end of Matt Martin. I honestly don't think he'll be on the team next year.
Well, see, and that's what I think. I don't want to squash your little theory, that you were espousing earlier, Phil. But I mean, if Barry just says, well, I'm just going to play my guys, Lou just could have waved their asses. See you later. Don't need you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, but then, I mean, waiving a guy like Matt Martin is just, in middle of this type of season where you've got so much turmoil, what's the point? But to upset the apple cart even more?
Show Lou who the boss is. I'm the boss. I'm the boss, Barry. I'm the boss. Not you. Lou Marta.
Oh my gosh. But and let's assume everything goes well. Players bounce back under the best.
And then again, you need Wahlstrom. You need Wahlstrom to step up, right? Here's a crazy stat for you. Anders Lee has either as many or more 5-on-5 goals than Wahlstrom and Beauvillier combined. That's a problem. Wahlstrom needs to get better.
Say that one more time.
5-on-5 goals. Wahlstrom and Beauvillier have a combined 9. I believe Lee I think he has 10, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll be honest with you. If I'm playing with Matt Barzal, I'd be able to put up points.
And the other guy's playing with the guy who can't skate in JG Pajot. So there you go. With lesser minutes.
So you're saying, okay, but he listen, he's played on a line with Pajot and Parise.
Facts. Those are just facts, Phil. Facts. Not fiction. Grumpy's facts.
He needs to be better. He's not playing with dregs. Let's not make it out to be like he's playing with Cizikas and Martin. He's playing with Parise and Pajot. Pajot hasn't been great this year.
He's playing with 2 third liners. I mean, that's the best way to put it. We just said that Parise is
so what you're saying is Wahlstrom is not able to do anything to elevate his game to the point where he could be a very good 5-on-5 player.
Wahlstrom is a very good piece that could score, and he snipes. I mean, that's what he is. He's physical. He's, for his size, he'll throw the body around a bit. He does show spurts here and there. He's not going to be a guy who's zipping past you with his ability to skate. He's a guy where if space is created for him, he's a guy who can pick spots. He's a guy where if Matt Barzal creates space for him, gives a little drop-off pass, I feel confident that a guy like Oliver Wahlstrom can convert an opportunity like that. We don't have anybody like that on this line currently, and we still determined to go ahead and put him out there with guys who don't skate all that well, and again, who are towards the tail end. That's just not going to be prone for him
Listen,
playing good hockey.
He hasn't been, in my opinion, he hasn't been fantastic on the power play either. He's been good on the power play, not great. And part of that is because Dobson, for some reason, is generally speaking terrible at setting him up for one-timers. I don't know what it is, but he just never gets it to him on a tee.
When I look at,
I think Wahlstrom has a higher ceiling for next year, though. I think that's a player that can improve. I think Dobson can improve. I think Pulock could bounce back.
Boy, there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of ifs in
there.
There's 1,000 ifs.
There's a ton of ifs, but the ifs are rooted in what we've seen them do as recently as 6 months ago.
Yeah, they suck. I'm sorry.
We're
in the 30s. We caught lightning in a bottle last couple of years. Shortened seasons. To me, it's so obvious. Don't worry, Phil. You'll come along. You're not there yet. Don't worry. You'll come along.
Well, here's I look at even the years where the Islanders were, wheeling and dealing with their team. We look at some of these younger players who were in their prime that you could maybe argue that aren't there as much yet. You look at the goals per game, and that's the issue that kind of leaves me, in a little bit of a crux. I mean, you look at the 3 years, 3 complete years under Trotz. First year he was there, 22nd in the league in goals scored a game. Second year, 24th goals per game, and then last year was 20th in goals scored per game. The team just doesn't score enough goals, and that's always been the biggest issue. Do you foresee a guy like Forsberg being able to immediately elevate us, and older players that are in our top 6? Do you imagine that immediately being able to elevate us to a team that's even 15th or 14th in goals scored per game? I just don't see it. I think that we're
only if you solve for the issue on the left side of the defense. Because if you don't, then no. Then the answer to the question is no, because I think the entire system is dependent. It's dependent on 5 players, and it's dependent on being able to move the puck up ice and have sustained zone time. And that's not something that Chara offers, and that's not something that Green offers, and frankly, that's not really something that Aho has been offering either. They don't have sustained zone time like they did in the past, up until the halfway point of last.
That Phil just can't wait to take those little slams at my boy Aho. You notice? You know what I'm saying? You know what? You can say the same thing about Pulock. He's been terrible this year.
He's been bad this year. He's been bad since the injury. Yep.
You can't expect that from Pulock either. There's
one
guy.
He was bad even before the injury when he was paired up with somebody not named Adam Pelech. But I'm sorry, continue.
Listen, he works best if you have Pulock and Pelech together. I'm fully confident that's a unit. I just am. There's enough evidence to suggest that they are an elite tandem together. I think they're going to be put back together next year.
They should.
Listen, I'd inquire if you're intent on moving Bailey to Arizona. I'd ask about what it would take to get Gostisbehere sent the other way. I think I think he's resurrected his career to the point where he's been excellent this season, offensively and defensively.
Barry Trotz and Shane Gostisbehere in the same sentence. You went there. You went there. You really went there? Okay.
I went there.
Oh my God.
Went there. He might murder him at some point. But
don't worry, it would be Noah Dobson's fault. Even though they play on different lines, it would be his fault.
No, I'd like them together. I'd like Ghost. I want to see Dobson.
Somebody has to play defense.
I'd love to see Dobson with the Ghost.
I hate Gostisbehere. I hate him.
He's been great this year.
With you. I think the Islanders, if they got Forsberg, could move up to 19th in the league in scoring.
I think they can move higher, but it would depend on who's the second pair D. That's really what it is. Listen. Their on-ice goal share with Pelech and Pulock out last year was like 65%. Just dominating teams. Just absolutely. What?
That was last year?
Last year. Yeah, they had like a 65% on-ice goal. It was just nuts. Just absolutely dismantling teams when those two were on the ice. That is the biggest piece of that's the biggest rung on the ladder they got knocked off, is that they're, for more than a third of the game, they just had complete control and were strangling teams. And Leddy and Mayfield were just about even. Dobson and Green were actually a plus pair together, taking on weaker matchups, of course, because they were a third pair. But you have to get that top pair back together and get them back to the form that they were. That's the biggest ingredient for the team to work. That was the backbone of it.
And I think actually they looked best 2 years ago. I thought they were outstanding together.
Until Pelech got hurt, you're saying?
Yes, until Pelech got hurt. I thought they were outstanding. Last year, I thought they took a step back, and this year was this year. I thought they maybe not using your little metrics. I'm just using the eyeball test. They had a lot of walkarounds last year.
Listen, they're going against the best in the league. That's going to happen.
I'm just saying.
Right? Everyone's going to get walked around. Every defenseman gets walked around by elite players.
Oh, so that's it now. So that's it. When they don't perform, that's because they're playing against elite play. Phil, I'm telling you what. For a guy who's big on facts, he uses a whole lot of.
Look at how many elite defenders Connor McDavid makes look like an idiot. I mean, that's just the way the league goes.
I'm not talking about Connor McDavid.
They're not getting beaten by dusters. Let's put it that way.
I'm going to show a few comments. I'm sorry, guys. We will not be able to do all the comments. I'm starting to star a few of them. So I'll pop up a few that I think will, obviously, further the conversation or will be fun.
Going to trigger something?
No, just for the
It's going to trigger Grumpy.
I mean, Phil is over here selling lollipops and gumdrops and everybody, rainbows and show ponies. I mean,
listen, I already am. I've got the ticker tape ready next year. I'm ready.
Toronto, right? You're a big Toronto guy.
Phil had a bold prediction that Toronto would not make the playoffs this year. So I'll be interested. Maybe
did you really say that?
I did.
It was a bold prediction at the beginning of the year.
What?
I'm waiting for the Red Wings to catch them. I'll tell you why. And it's still a problem. I hate their forward depth, but listen, Matthews and Marner and Tavares have been. I mean, Tavares lately has been bad, but for a stretch, and Nylander, they carried the team, and Bunting has been a surprise. But I knew the Nick Ritchie thing wouldn't work out, and Nick Ritchie's now, on the desert, or in the desert rather. They're still looking to upgrade their second line, which has been terrible now because Kerfoot has come back down to earth. I thought their D is bad, and their D, they've got two gigantic holes on D right now, with Muzzin being out for the rest of the season, at least the regular season, and Justin Hall just not being an NHL player. And I didn't think that Jack Campbell, for the first 40 games of the season or 35 games of the season, would be a 940 goaltender. I thought he'd be more in line with what he is now. And now they're losing games because him and Mrazek both stink. So is Detroit going to catch them? No. But the logic essentially was that Montreal was going to be competitive again, and that I thought Montreal would compete with Toronto for the fourth spot, and that Boston would be the third seed, which I think still could happen. I think they're 4 points behind them or 3 points behind them or something like that. I still think Boston could overtake Toronto, but I had Montreal and Toronto fighting it out for that fourth spot, and that's when I made my bold prediction that Toronto won't make it. I did not see Montreal being the worst team in the league.
Neither did I. That was the one thing.
Hands up.
That was surprising thing to me.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I wasn't dumb enough to say that Toronto was not making the playoffs.
Grumpy, if you had a Twitter, Grumpy, I can only imagine that like they do something called freezing cold takes, Grumpy. You'd have a few really cold takes.
It's a freezing cold take. Save it. Put it up there. I still think they're going to get absolutely slaughtered with whoever they play in the first round, because I think they got too many holes on defense to patch. I mean, their top pair is Riley with Brody. The second pair they put out last night was Lyubushkin with Sandin, and Sandin's good. I don't think he's a second pair, and I think Lyubushkin stinks, and he got smoked on Columbus's third goal. And their third pair, they benched Hall. They went with Liljegren and who did they go on with the left, and Dermott.
I don't
Good
know.
luck to Liljegren and Dermott when you're staring down Nikita Kucherov.
Now you were just pumping up Dermott earlier in this podcast. If we moved Mayfield for Dermott,
he's a third pair. He's a third pair that you could have on your team. But I'm not trusting him to play when your second pair is Sandin and Lyubushkin.
I just liked how we're poking in some of your facts all of a sudden. We're poking little holes in your facts theories.
No, I mean, like they've got players. I mean, like Amarov, we're talking about that maybe is worth of
Amarov, unfortunately, was diagnosed with a brain tumor today.
Good job, TJ. Really good job there.
Yeah. I didn't know we got diagnosed with the brain tumor.
On the guy with the brain tumor. Really, really.
Yeah, he's getting treatment in Germany. So, yeah, that's just unfortunate.
That's brand new news to me, Grumpy. I didn't know. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Very
Thanks,
sad.
TJ. Thanks a lot.
Well, obviously, praise
now we're going to
God.
get us canceled for picking on people with brain tumors.
No, I'm saying he would be good in return for a trade, Grumpy. I didn't know he had.
No, unfortunately.
He'll probably hockey's the least of his worries.
I mean, apparently he's skating 3 times a week in Germany, but he's getting treatment for cancer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of what pieces could come back in our way. Obviously, that would not be one of those.
That would not be one of those. No.
Ivo, and these are just going to be a few comments I picked. Sorry if I'm not going to get to all the comments, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to do my best. Ivo says, what unrestricted free agents does Phil wish the Islanders signed this summer?
Well, we already saw the Flames assistant GM say this morning that the Goodrow deal is as good as done. Now, whether or not that's just posturing by the Flames, who knows? That would be a dream, of course, but I think Forsberg's the dream.
Okay. Gotcha.
Get ready for nightmare, Islander fans.
John A says, Andrew Gross said on his podcast that Zach Parise told him he did not want to be traded. Just when I thought maybe we could get decent compensation. Now, do you think this is going to be a similar situation? Does he give the same exact liberty to Zach Parise and say, do you want to be traded? Do you not want to be traded? If he doesn't want to be traded, we keep him. If he wants to be traded, we move him. If he doesn't want to be traded, per Andrew Gross, do we use the same ideology we use with Chara and Andy Green?
Get rid of him. Dump his ass.
I'm just saying that's what people are saying, right? He's asking people if they want to stay or go, and if that's the case with Zach Parise,
listen, I trust Gross because he's in the room with these guys virtually, at least, and he speaks to them. And he probably gets them, off the record sometimes. But I just don't understand why Parise would want to stay.
I'm going to tell you why.
I'll tell you this. I'll just tell you this. What I want is for them to be able to recoup assets for him. What will happen is if Parise doesn't want to go, I don't think Lou's going to trade him. That's not what I want, but I don't think Lou will.
Here's the thing. Why doesn't he want to get traded? Why would he? He's playing first line minutes, playing on the power play, playing on the penalty kill at 37 years old. What the hell? I mean, where's he going to play if he goes to a contender? He's going to be a bottom six guy. I mean, getting limited minutes. That's why he doesn't. It's a country club over here for everybody.
You don't think he wants a ring? You don't think he wants a shot to go to, I don't know, the Flames and pick up a cup?
No idea. I'm just saying when he says he doesn't want to get traded, that's the reason why he doesn't want to get traded. He gets a shitload of ice time. They treat him like a god over here. I can do no wrong. Hey, we have a problem. Put Zach Parise there. He'll fix it.
Listen, I think from an offseason standpoint, what's potentially an even more interesting route is if you want to kind of upgrade on that Beauvillier spot and use Beauvillier in a trade for a Kevin Fiala, because Minnesota is cap strapped and they had a problem with Fiala's contract this past year and they could only do 1 year. That's interesting. Is there something that you could do with Vancouver and Brock Besser, who's not played great with, the past 2 years in Vancouver? Can you make a deal like that? That's interesting to me. That's another route you could potentially go for a guy who's in Beauvillier's age bracket and upgrade that way, rather than simply splurging on a UFA. It's an interesting proposition, but I still ultimately think you have to get rid of Bailey. He just can't be on the team.
Finally, something we agree on, Phil.
We've been wanting that for the last few years.
I've been saying that for 13 years.
Tommy B saying here, congratulations to Daniel Chara on playing his 1,000.
TJ, man, let me tell you something. That TJ's going to get his little boot-licking buddies on here.
Next.
Come on.
Next. I tweeted out, by the way, the Islanders' social media accounts. It's like, oh, tomorrow the record's going to be broken. First of all, weird thing to jinx him because, what if, God forbid, the guy has a heart attack and, it never happens. It's just so weird to put that out as this is what's going to happen tomorrow. But I, retweeted and I'm like,
okay,
listen
to me. Stop for a second. TJ's guy got a brain cancer. Let's trade for him. You're saying Zdeno Chara's going to have a heart attack before tomorrow night. Since when am I the little ray of sunshine on this podcast? That's what I want to know.
I didn't know we got brain cancer today, Grumpy. How the heck am I supposed to know that? I don't keep up with all the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Zdeno Chara's going to have a heart attack overnight. He just said
no, God forbid. It's just it's just a weird thing to tweet out in advance of that. That's all. But what I wrote was we punted on the chance to go to the playoffs for the stupid record. So no, I will not be reading this propaganda.
There it is. I just figured I'd pop it up.
Phil, see, if you actually said that, it comes across better with your delivery than your little tweet. That's what you typed. Right?
I'm sure got a lot of likes. I have no idea, but I assume that probably got a lot of likes because I'm sure many people agree with that thought process, Phil.
I just hate the Chara propaganda. I hate the whole, he's been such an impact on Dobson. Well, then why is Dobson still pretty much awful defensively? I don't think he's getting more power play points because he sits next to Chara at the lunch table. You know what I mean? I think he's getting more points because he's shooting more. He's getting more ice time. So by virtue of having 21 or 22 minutes a game versus 15 minutes a game, you're just going to have more points. He's getting better at the power play thing, and he's still not great defensively.
I think it's hurt him defensively playing with Chara because he's got to cover for him all the time, as opposed to just playing his spot. He's had to cover for the fact that Chara can't move out there.
But is that the kind of thing that could help you in the long run, though?
Is it the thing that? I mean, if you're trying to, same thing we're talking about with goaltenders. You want to be able to believe that your partner can do what he's supposed to do out there on the ice. If he's not, you're doing no good work.
Too much.
What your partner does. Same thing when you're working with a cohesive unit of the offensive line. You want to believe your left guard, right guard. You want to believe all your linemen can go ahead and Grumpy.
Do offensive line talk on your time, please.
I want to throw it in there because I know I get a reaction from you. But I mean, you want to believe your partner's going to be able to do what he's supposed to do.
Right, because if you have to cover for him, you're potentially letting something that you're supposed to do or some aspect that, you're supposed to cover this man or cover this period of ice, this space on ice, and you have to cover for him. All of a sudden, you're out of position. I mean, I've seen that many, many times this year. And I think it's, people say, well, he's not. Look, he made that mistake. Yeah, but it's because Chara can't get to the puck in the corner.
He can't.
I mean, he just can't. Boy, talk about a turnstile. Oh, my God.
His ice time in second periods must be astronomical. The strategy is, if you watch the games, the strategy is simple, and it was most on display in that second game versus Red Wings. You dump it in on the left side. Yep. He's not able to get there. It's the period of the long change, and you got him out for a 2.5-minute shift. And it's been happening all season long.
And Dobson's had to cover for him. And I think that's why I think you say, oh, he hasn't been good defensively. I think there's a reason why. I think he's actually gotten better positionally and physically defensively this year. He's still not a finished physical product, but he's winning more battles along the walls than he did previously.
Michael M. saying, Phil, you look a little bit like Kyle Dubas.
Probably is him.
Maybe. That's it. Well, Dubas is handsome, so I'll take it.
All right. It's
funny. She's saying Phil can't marry, kill, or marry, screw, or kill. He would just kill, kill, kill. He gives me those Dexter vibes.
Oh, shit.
I figured he'd find that one interesting. Andre M. says, according to David Pagnotta, who is a very reputable source and reliable, the Wild have interest in Josh Bailey. Now, I want to ask what
I think he's being sarcastic.
No, I don't think he is.
No?
Maybe not.
Listen to me, Phil. You can laugh at your listeners on your podcast. Do not laugh at my listeners. You understand?
I just thought he was making a joke.
Well, he could be.
Maybe it is. I don't think so. But looking good as always. And Grumpy is looking suave, Grump. I wanted to put that up just because it's a compliment to you, Grump.
Thank you, Michael. I love Michael. He's a great guy.
Jared Ben wants to know, Phil, if you had to either vote for Snoop Dogg or Gary Bettman as president, who would you pick?
Gary Bettman.
There was a quick one. Time B says, expect JT Miller to be the next big name to get traded.
I'm not convinced.
Tom White says, management has to do something before Barzal's contract is done. He needs to see progression, not regression. I don't see him sticking around if things don't change.
I agree.
Yeah, we discussed that already for sure.
Andy Green will not be traded. He's told the Islanders he is retiring at the end of the season and won't move. The reason Aho is playing now and Green is not. Aho will be dealt. Do you think Sebastian Aho will be a name that the Islanders are trying to move? You mentioned that he is not one of the solutions here. It's more Salo. Does a team find some sort of value in a guy like Sebastian Aho as a seventh defenseman?
No, because I don't think any team would ever get down to the point where you'd want Sebastian Aho being the guy that you're putting out in a playoff game. Simple as that. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent by virtue of the fact that he's not going to hit 80 games. So he's going to be a Group 6 UFA. Even though Cap Friendly says he's an RFA with arbitration rights, it just hasn't updated in their software yet.
Yes, Phil. There he goes, man. That passive-aggressive shit that Phil does so well.
Because people keep going to be like, hey, Phil, why do you keep saying he's a UFA if it says on Cap Friendly he's an RFA with arbitration rights? Well, it's because it hasn't registered the fact that he can't possibly hit 80 games on his career when there just are only 36 or 7 left, and there's just not enough to get him to 80. So he's going to be a UFA. He probably hates the Islanders because Barry never plays him. This is the last place he'd want to sign. More realistically, if no one's going to give him a one-way deal, he's probably going to do what a guy like Timashov did and go back to Europe rather than be waved down to the AHL, which is ultimately what I think happens with him. So no, I don't think any team is going to pay anything for Aho Why Aho's playing right now, I have no idea. Don't know.
Druel says, at the end of the day, business is business. You want fans in a seat, you got to start the rebuild sooner rather than later.
That's right, Phil.
If you want fans in the seats, doing a full-on rebuild is going to keep them out of the seats. That's just my opinion.
You have to be one of two things. You have to be winning, or you have to be fun to watch. Right now, we're neither.
They were fun to watch. I mean, I guess they were giving up so many goals that it got not fun at a certain point. But they were scoring in buckets under Doug Weight. That was, for a certain kind of hockey fan, that was entertaining. The losing part wasn't entertaining, but they were losing like 7-6.
But
5-4.
At least the games were fun, though.
But the building was empty, though.
I'm not. Well, that's
it's because we had been years of hideous play, years of bad play. Now we've had this little renaissance.
But I mean, that was Barzal's rookie season. All of a sudden, you have for the first time ever, we've got a guy who can skate like the wind and looks like a superstar out there. And you would have thought that on a night in, night out basis, you'd have more than 10,000 fans showing up to Barclays, and they just didn't because they sucked.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. I don't think we would ever be as bad as a time period that we were under Doug Weight in the past. I think that, you look at the pieces we have. I think that Trotz is a good coach. I'm just not sure he's the coach for this solution.
He's not.
We need Brendan Moore to get us to the second round.
There it is.
Well, if he played us, he'd probably be a Stanley Cup champion.
We need Brendan Moore to get us to the second round to lose in 5 to Tampa.
So let me ask you this. If this year, we're not making the playoffs, and next year we don't.
And when Carolina wins a cup this year.
Carolina, I don't think is winning the cup.
They're not winning the cup.
When they win the cup this year, then what are you going to say?
They're not winning the cup. They're not winning the cup. I'm sorry. My thing with this season is until someone proves to me that they could beat Vasilevsky in a 7-game series, the favorite is Tampa. Until proven otherwise. That's my line on this.
I agree with that.
You beat Vasilevsky in a 7-game series, go right ahead.
Vasilevsky would be 90 years old, and we were not beating him in 7. Didn't matter.
No one beat him. No one beat him. No one could beat him 3 times.
Best goalie in the league. Best goalie in the league.
He is.
Evel's saying Mike Carver was on Hockey Night in New York podcast and said that there's no way that Lou's going to rebuild. Just a tweak here or there. Lou wants to win now.
Well, Mike Carver also said that in July, I would not take Zach Parise for 5 cents on the dollar. He's completely washed. He's completely done. I do not want this player. So,
were you trumpeting the Zach Parise signing? Were you leading that?
Fan of Zach Parise? Yeah, he was. I think if I recall correctly, Phil, you were a fan of the Zach Parise signing.
I was a very big fan of Zach Parise. I am still a very big fan of the Zach Parise signing. I think Zach Parise. Listen, he's not going to finish with the 20 goals I said he would, but I think you'll get a respectable 12, 13 goal
10.
With 22 assists stat line for 34 points. Something like that.
TJ, I owe you an apology.
What is that for?
It was Phil who said Parise was going to get 20.
That's what I said. Listen, I said 10 to 15. You kept saying 15 to 20. I'm like, when the hell did I say that, Grum?
TJ was consistent. We was in the summer. TJ said 10 to 15. I said Parise is going to bounce back. He's going to score 20 goals on this team.
And what did I say?
None.
You said he was going to score like 6.
He's going
to put up like no points. He's completely done. He can't skate. He can't play defense. He can't play special teams. I think you were the most wrong because the only thing I got wrong was the goal scoring production. Right? I was off on the goal score. I'll own that. But as a player, he is someone who is, I think he's fun to watch. He is one of like 3 guys on a consistent basis who actually looks like he knows what the hell he's doing out there. And he plays the role that you would hope he would play and is playing it well. We have always had a problem at that LW3 position. It went from starting off with like Tanner Fritz, and then it was Andrew Ladd for a bit, and then Tom Kuhnackel and Michael Dalcole, Leo Komarov for a bit. We never had that position solidified with anyone remotely close to what Zach Parise is giving you. And it's just a shame because on last year's roster or 2 years ago's roster, someone like that potentially could have made a difference. That's all. They've wasted it. They've wasted an opportunity with Parise still as an effective player.
Well, but we still had to play Tampa, right? 2 years ago?
Listen.
It didn't matter. We weren't winning. No, Phil. No. Forget it.
Oh man,
we would have won with Zach Parise.
But I was 100% wrong about Parise. I'm pleasantly surprised with his play this year. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, I didn't think that he was going to. I did not want him.
Frank.
I just didn't think.
Let me ask you this: would you want him back for $750 next year as a bottom six? Would you take him back? $750 straight up.
I would.
You would.
But here's the reason why I didn't want him in over the summer, was because I didn't think he was a piece to put us over the top. I still feel the same way. We have so many issues in our top six that I didn't think a third line left wing was going to be enough to make us a true Stanley Cup contender. And unfortunately, I was proven right. But that's why I didn't want him. I wanted a younger player, not somebody who's 37. But would I take him back next year to play the fourth line? Yeah. If Barry's coach, he'd be back on the first line in no time, though.
He's played one game on the first line and was.
When do you think he's coming off that first line? You think anytime?
Never. He was great.
There you go.
That's what I was about to say. Frank G says, I love the Barzal, Parise, and Palmieri line. That may be the mix.
Listen, I think it should have been tried like by game 10. Just juggle it up and see if something works. He can move. He can retrieve the puck, get it to Barzal. I mean, how many opportunities do they have? Palmieri had enough opportunities last night where he could have had a hat trick. There was one where he just missed it, sliding it across an empty net. There was one on his weak side where Grubauer robbed him. I think there was another one where Parise with beautiful pass up to Barzal where he tried to go 5-hole and Grubauer closed it. They generated a ton of chances. Let's see what they do against San Jose tomorrow night, and maybe that's something that they roll with for the rest of the season.
Do you want to sign a guy like Rasmus Ristolainen in this summer?
No.
No.
Can't
Warzone Warlord says Panarin chose the Rangers because he knows Trotz would take away his offensive game.
This guy's the warlord. He's the warlord, Phil. You don't gotta question him.
Now we already knew that he was, that was that small time period of about like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours that we all thought that Panarin was penciled in to come to the Islanders before he signed with the Rangers. Do you think that Barry Trotz's style had any impact on Panarin and where he wanted to sign, or did you just always think it was the Rangers?
You think he wanted to play for David Quinn? No, he wanted to go play on Broadway, plain and simple. He wanted to play on Broadway. And this is the argument that I'm getting as to like, why the hell would Forsberg want to come to the Islanders if they're not a playoff team this season? And the answer is it's all about what makes the player tick. For Panarin, the Rangers were the 6th worst team in the league that season, right? They went from 6 to 2 in the draft because they got the lottery luck. But why did Panarin want to go there? Because for him, he wanted the bright lights of Broadway, and he wanted to be a superstar in the world's largest venue.
And his wife wanted to go there also.
His wife's a model or something like that, right? Or an artist, something like that. And his wife wanted to be there. So why would Forsberg pick the Islanders? If there's some sort of appeal to him, because maybe he likes hiking in Montauk, or maybe his wife likes the suburban life and they also like to be 30 minutes from Manhattan. Maybe that's what gets him there. Maybe he really, really enjoyed playing for Barry Trotz back in 2011. Who the hell knows? But I don't think people make decisions necessarily based on team is good, team is bad, team is this, team is that. With Panarin, it was simply he was going to be a Ranger, and they used the Islanders as leverage to bid up the price. End of story.
George P. says, can you believe the Islanders Kool-Aid thinking that we're going to get assets for trading away Josh Bailey? Now,
just moving him as an asset. Just moving him off the roster is an asset.
Correct. You get $5 million in cap space.
He says he will personally drive Josh Bailey to Minnesota if that's the case. So we've got.
I'd fly him there private, to be honest.
Wow.
There it is. He'd fly him first class. We'd fly him first class. Matthew S. said, would have to be given an offer that we cannot refuse to part ways with Scott Mayfield. In the offseason, it might be different.
I don't know. I think if you're going to move him to get the most assets you can, it's this. It's
the trade deadline. Yeah, the trade deadline, not the offseason.
Yeah.
Offseason prices are always at a discount because people are jockeying for cap space position. The trade deadline, you're trying to win a Stanley Cup. When you know it comes with an extra year, I mean, no, if you're going to move him, it's the trade deadline. Yeah,
Mayfield's got, and this is Michael W. saying, Mayfield's got one of the best contracts on the Islanders right now for certain. We're getting a lot of no Chychrons, and we got a one of what would it take to move or to acquire a guy like Jacob Chychrun.
More than any other team is willing to offer.
We're not getting.
I mean, that's the answer.
We're not
We're
getting-
not.
Score more
Murphy's right. We're
points
not
than
getting
the
him because we
team.
don't have the most to offer.
How are you going to win? We got to score more points than the other team.
No, but seriously, I mean, there's no shortage of teams. Everyone could fit him. He's got a cheap cap hit. He's only in 4 and change. So pretty much any team in the league could make that work. It's not like adding a $10 million guy to the roster. $4.5 million for 2 pair. You're going to have 30 teams lining up for that.
Okay. And Jim M saying every problem is Barry Trotz, according to TJ.
That's not true.
I think that he does get, I mean, like I look at the line combinations we've thrown out there this year, hasn't been great. I think system, long term, I'm just not sure it's the answer.
I mean, here's another one. What are they expecting Nelson to do on his strong side on the power play there? What's he doing there? This new alignment where they took Wahlstrom off of the right dot. Yeah. What is Nelson supposed to do there? He can't shoot a one-timer from there.
No.
He's not an excellent passer. I have no idea what he's doing on that unit. That should be Palmieri.
That's all. That's a Trotz thing, though. That's a Trotz thing.
Don't understand.
He has a lot of baffle. How is Josh Bailey still on the power play? He's still on the power play. I just can't wrap my head around. Now, Jim, no offense, lovely family, by the way. I love looking at the pictures. Lovely family, but I don't think that TJ says every problem is Barry Trotz.
I mean, there's definitely a point and reason for criticism this year for what he's done. I mean, like he's done a lot for the team, a lot of great for the team. You just don't want to. I don't want to waste years thinking to ourselves, okay, we're right on the verge. I just think there's a lot of work that has to be done. And I was a big believer, and I thought that everything was pointing to us making a move for a guy like a Vladimir Tarasenko this offseason. I really did. I'm not sure if I bought into false hype. I don't know. Could have been a multitude of different things. But I've thought that every offseason, right? This is the year we're going to make something big. This is the year we're going to do it. I don't want to be disappointed the same way I was in off seasons past. So
I don't think anyone thought they were going to do anything the offseason before. They couldn't do anything.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. This last offseason. That was
really last offseason and the Panarin offseason. Those were the two. Panarin one, you wanted to convince yourself that it was going to happen.
I wanted him. I remember I was walking around the block. I know exactly where I was in my neighborhood when I heard he was signed to the Islanders. I'm like, oh my God, I remember it. Yep. It was a Saturday afternoon. I know exactly where I'm like, oh,
it was a Sunday afternoon.
No, it was Saturday.
No. Bob McKenzie came out with it on a Sunday afternoon. I was pushing my daughter on the swing, and I call my brother, and I'm like, Jonathan, it's happening. We're getting Panarin. And I remember where I was, and I was ecstatic.
It's like when
all my Ranger fan friends were like, no, they're just bidding up the price here, you idiot. I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have known.
When I hear everybody giving their stories, it's like the day. It's like, Grumpy, you can give us like certain aspects where it's like, I remember this is a day that U.S. beat the Russians, and the Miracle on Ice happened. You give me the layout of what happened beforehand.
Like when Kennedy died. When Elvis, I knew where I was when Elvis died. I remember exactly where I was.
When Michael Jackson died, it happened on
I remember exactly where it was
Friday morning.
Listen, I remember Tavares Day. I was at LAX flying back from Los Angeles from a wedding, and I was sick. And then they're like, well, wait a minute. It looks like Lou's about to pull a rabbit out of the hat because Islanders are closing in on Ryan O'Reilly. And I'm like, okay, we lost JT, but it sounds like we're getting Ryan O'Reilly. No. And then it was just like Buffalo's asking for like Kiefer Bellows and Ryan Pollock. And I'm like, oh, screw that. Like, this is back when we thought this is right after Kiefer Bellows had the record-setting World Junior. And I'm like, no, I'm not trading Bellows. He's going to be on the team this year. He's amazing. Screw that. And then he ended up going to Buffalo. I'm like, okay, well, someone else is going to come. We're going to get Carlson, or we're going to get Duchesne, and then we got Filppula and Komarov.
We never get anyone. Never. We just don't.
No, we don't. That's. I mean, it's unfortunate. Jake, there 2 minutes pessimistic. He says the Kraken and Hextall. Those names make me want to vomit. Grump knows I'm a grumpy old man in training. Jeff E says, yeah, Ron Hextall's cousin. And it was an ESPN feed, not the Kraken. It was a national game on ESPN Plus. She was brutal, but it was all ESPN.
It was hard to listen to.
commentary about how teams need to trade for Palmieri makes me think, am I just on drugs or are they on drugs?
I think
They are
everyone's
on
on
drugs.
drugs.
Everyone's on drugs.
Bocephus says, I look for St. Louis to trade a guy like Jordan Binghamton this offseason with those two young goalies that they've got.
Who's going to trade for him?
I was about to say, is a guy like Jordan, I mean, like he's had success in the past. I know he hasn't been fantastic as of the last few years, but I mean, I see guys get traded for based off of past success all the time.
He's a one-hit wonder.
I just want to say thanks to Hank Williams Jr. Chiming in on the podcast.
What's Hank? What do you mean by Hank Williams Jr.?
Bocephus.
Was that a song you sang or something?
It's his nickname.
Oh, gotcha. Andre M says 2 years of Holtby is okay.
Maybe. I don't know.
I wouldn't be opposed to 2 years of Holtby. That's
way to go on a limb there, Phil. I guess you're hanging on to the trunk, not like TJ.
I mean, what's the dollar cost? Ideally, you want the second goalie spot always to be occupied by someone as cheap as possible. And
he's getting paid $2 million a year on a prove-it deal. He hasn't necessarily proved it this year. I mean, what do you think? 3? I mean, like even if you sign him to 2 years, $3 million, I think that the prove-it deal didn't really pan out for him this year.
Yeah, but there's no goalies available this summer, so you're going to be able to get more. I think.
There are always goalies available every year.
Not this year. Look at it this year. Last year there were. This year there's not.
I mean, Braden Holtby, I feel like is one of the bigger names. Marc-Andre Fleury is the biggest, and Holtby, I think, is the second when you talk about name.
No, the second is Kemper.
I'm okay. I'm thinking name. I mean, did Holtby want to point in the Vezina?
I don't think so.
Close at one time. Okay, I couldn't remember if he did with Washington or whether it was close. Frank K says Phil's correct. Shesterkin hit 50 wins in only 79 games. Lundqvist took longer.
There was a comment that somebody just said, wrong, Phil. I like that one. That was good.
I can't pop up when people are like, you're right, Grumpy, or you're wrong, Phil, because I don't remember the context and it happened.
That's okay, because it's pretty much any comment that Phil makes, just say wrong, Phil. Very easy.
I just think of that Trump clip from the Hillary debates. Wrong.
Wrong.
The little memes. The meme economy.
And he was right. Wrong.
Sal P says, and look at that great shirt of Maddie and the Jags at the merchandise store, which you could find. Forsberg is a great player. I doubt he's going to want to come playing in no offense system. Hey, Philip, forget about scoring. Drop back into the zone and defend. Try to make some things happen. Just dump it out. Now,
don't try to make things happen.
Don't try to make things happen. Just dump it out. Yeah. Now, do you think that we've talked about this before? We have no earthly idea. I want to ask now as things get closer and it looks like, hey, you're not that the Nashville Predators are not re-signing Forsberg. He's going to be a free agent this offseason, going to be traded. Probably going to be a free agent this offseason. Do we think that Barry and Forsberg had a good relationship in the limited time he was in Nashville?
It's so impossible to know. I think they had a great relationship. I think they were best of buddies.
Barry
Forsberg came in as an 18-year-old, I think, and Barry
hated his guts. You're young, you suck.
We know he didn't get along with Burakovsky, who's going to be another big free agent this summer, who's going to be overpaid by someone. I don't want to overpay Burakovsky. I'll give you my nightmare scenario. My nightmare scenario is that Lou signs Kadri to 7 years, $8 million. That is my nightmare, because someone is going to make a very big, gigantic mistake and give him that kind of money. And Lou did his Toronto deal. So he knows this player. And he's a good player, but
oh God,
he's not this good. He's already eclipsed his career numbers in 45 games. That's my nightmare scenario.
I didn't even think of that as a nightmare possibility, but now
that's the nightmare.
Oh shit.
When they announced that they signed, everyone's gonna be like, oh, Forsberg, good drug deal. And then all of a sudden, Nazem Kadri with the Islanders, $8.6 million on a 6-year deal. And you're just going to be like, holy shit, what did we just do here?
Oh my God.
It's going to happen, boys.
Jesus.
TJ, can you put Sal's comment back up?
Yes, I can.
Phil, I'm sure you've heard of Matt Barzell liking the tweet from.
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing it up. I totally forgot about that. The like and unlike.
I saw it.
What do you make of that, Phil?
Yeah, what do you make of that?
I make nothing of that.
Okay, let me post up Damn, Philzfacts must be on the payroll.
I honestly don't care. You have a player who is under team control, and ultimately, I don't think he's going to decide whether or not he's going to stay or leave because of a Martin St. Louis 50-second soundbite. Would he like to score 85 points as opposed to 65? Sure.
Just to bring it back up, this was, again, long story short, Marty St. Louis talks about how sometimes systems can shackle very talented players and it takes the reads out of games, and sometimes it can hinder very, very special players and make them average. Matt Barzal liked the tweet, then was unlike the tweet after the game. Again, I don't think it's going to make him say, I want to play for Marty St. Louis. I just think it means that, again, we've talked about the frustration we've seen visibly on the ice. I think this just further validates that Matt Barzal is frustrated under Barry Trotz.
Validation.
Do you agree that that's a possibility?
Validation.
Yeah. I think a lot of players are frustrated with a lot of things this year. I think
what the hell's going on in your house over there? I hear a lot of noise.
It looks like my wife is taking out some fruit.
Ooh, I'm about hungry. I haven't eaten some dinner yet, Grumpy.
I was going to go maybe tomatoes at Phil.
Maybe a little 6 hot dog special. Maybe a little 6 hot dog special tonight. I'm not sure, but I think the sodium is messed up. I gotta tone it back a little bit on the sodium intake.
So let me ask you a question. You're a tweet guy, right, Phil? You do a lot of tweets. Now, do you like tweets? Do you like things?
I like some things, yeah.
How many tweets have you liked over your time? Like it said, Matt Barzal, 425 likes. Is that a lot of likes?
It wasn't done by accident, but I think
it's certainly not done by accident. But
Phil agrees that he's probably unhappy under
I just want to know if that's a lot. I don't know enough about Twitter to comment, so I'm gonna. Phil's a big Twitter guy. Tweets, right? Yeah, Philzfacts tweets his little stuff out, and there's a lot of. How many likes do you have in your history?
I have no idea. A lot, many.
More than 425?
Sure, but I'm more active than Barzal is. That's why.
And Matt Barzal doesn't go on Twitter that often, so it just made it very odd that he jumped on Twitter, liked that tweet. I mean, it's not like that. Matt Barzal's living on.
He deliberately liked that tweet. I think he liked what it said there. I listen. I think if you interviewed him candidly after each one of the seasons, even with the long runs, he would say, "Oh man, I wish I could just go and play my game and do whatever the heck I want to do." That doesn't necessarily mean that he's all of a sudden going to jump ship. I'm sure there's a lot of things that a lot of players and a lot of teams are frustrated with at times. I mean, Mitch Marner at the end of every playoff series that the Leafs lose looks like hell. Looks like he'd rather be anywhere but Toronto. That doesn't mean he wasn't going to re-sign with them.
What if you get a couple of soda pops in old Matty B and you ask him, "Hey, what do you think about Barry Trotz?" He sucks.
Maybe.
I worry about that long term too. I really do, and I don't want. We've talked about it. That's why I don't believe in a full rebuild. I believe in some sort of modification. You've got to change things up. You've got to get a little bit of a younger look. You've got to get ingratiated with what the current NHL is today. I think sticking with an old antiquated, slow, grinded out big defensemen who are immobile doesn't work. I mean, you can get away with clutching and grabbing in the playoffs. But when we looked at what we tried to roll out there this year, just wasn't successful for a multitude of reasons. Again, that old style of, Mayfield is more meant as an old style defenseman. He gets away with a lot of clutching and grabbing in the regular season, but all that gets pretty much always scot-free in the playoffs. And Char does the same thing. But
Mayfield, by the way, he is an underrated offensive defenseman.
He thinks he's better offensively than he really is.
What?
He thinks he's better off. I mean, it's like you were living in a diner over there, Phil. He thinks, like the plates. I don't care. No, leave
Look at now. You're making Phil self-conscious. He's muting himself every single time. Look at that.
You just the plates clanking in the diner all the time. That's what it sounded like. That's all.
I'm hungry. I want to eat at Phil's house. I'm making a trip.
I don't know what the hell I was going to talk about.
I don't either.
I don't.
That Mayfield thinks he's better offensively than he is.
He thinks he's better than he is, and he actually is defensively. I think that's a big. He thinks he's an offensive player. He's not.
He's not an offensive player. It's just I think he has good instincts. I think he makes good reads in the offensive zone. I like that play where he went to the slot yesterday and almost had a chance there. That pass off the boards to Cizikas, the 80-foot pass that he had to Barzal a couple weeks ago. He just does things that you wouldn't expect. Coming down the right side and feeding Cizikas for the game-tying goal against Philly. The snipe against.
Scott's my boy, just to let you know.
I love Scott.
I love him too. But I think he thinks he's Bobby Orr sometimes. And
he does. He does.
That's my only issue with him.
Got Tony Chi saying, my parents only got along when they both disliked someone. Thanks, Phil, for bringing TJ and Crumpy together, if only for a few moments. Jared Ben saying,
I just wonder if Tony's parents were happy when they were hanging out with Tony then.
No, they're talking about you and I as Tony's parents, Grumpy.
I understand. I wonder if Tony's parents were happy when he was around.
Oh, okay.
Jeez, man, I got to explain that to you.
Jared Ben saying the Very Good Islander site said Bailey is now linked to Minnesota, is what the Very Good Islander site said. VP said, I love you, Grump, but Brock Nelson is a real good player.
I don't think he's real good. He's okay. I just think
you
he's a guy
high on that freaking hill and it's wrong every goddamn year.
Okay. There's a segment of Brock haters, and it's like a religion, and it's kind of like, I know Grumpy's the president of it, and then there's a couple of followers.
He's the president of that and the I Hate Josh Bailey Club, so he's a very busy man.
So the Josh Bailey hate club was just overblown and overkill really up until this season, because he was never just irredeemably bad until this year, where the people who say that Josh Bailey's elite was just doing it to get under, at least for the most part, under those people's skin. Then you have the Brock Nelson people, and I guess earlier in his career when he was 24, 25, you just expected more from him. A big defenseman, he's got decent skating ability, a real good shot. You wanted more consistency out of him. Really, since Barry took over, there is absolutely no justifiable reason why anyone should hate Brock Nelson.
He's soft. He's freaking soft as shit.
Okay, yeah, okay. What I
love,
here's
the thing. I guess when you look back on Brock Nelson's career, and he's not a defenseman, Phil, he's a center. But when you look back on Croc's career when it's all over, you know what you're going to say? Oh, yeah, he was okay. Played for the Islanders there. Yeah, he was all right. That's the most you're going to say about it. Oh, man, I put my money down to see Croc Areno score an empty netter or score 4 goals against a miserable Montreal team.
Brock Nelson will be remembered as a forward for the Islanders that played and was a very solid player. That was what Brock Nelson's legacy will be.
Solid player. He was a solid player.
What else do you want for a second line center? Do I want a guy? You're not going to get Hall of Famers as second line centers, Grump. What the hell you want as a second line guy?
He was a solid player when Barry Trotz was his coach, because I think he's benefited more from Barry Trotz than any other player on the roster.
I agree.
Yeah, and by the way, everyone talks about, oh, you go to play for Trotz and automatically you shave off like 400 points. There are only 2 people who moved dramatically off of their career averages since Barry took over. And Barzal didn't have a career average. He just had 1 career year. Barzal took a dip of 20 points and Brock added 20 points. Every other player has more or less bounced around their career average.
Well, Alexander Ovechkin
was a team of Jags, Phil. That's why.
Put up all these numbers.
I can't. Here's the thing. And OV is not a fair comparison for me to use because we don't have any Hall of Famers. When we look at the stats, Alexander Ovechkin had 4 years, I think, before Trotz. He had every single year he was on more than a point a game average. I think it was 2 out of the 4 years under Trotz, or 2 out. Let me pull it up for you. I've done this before, and I've
dipped that dramatically.
I've looked at it with other people before, but let me make sure.
Again, you're talking maybe 5 to 7% at most.
The points thing is they had 1 year. He had 1 year where he was under the point a game average before Trotz. That was 2011, 2012. And that was, I can't remember who the hell the coach was for Washington at that time period. And then out of the 4 years he was with Trotz, I believe it was, he had 2 of those 4 years he was
the
at.
First two.
Okay. Gotcha.
15, 16, and 17, 18, right? No, 14, 15 was Trotz.
Game. That was, or when the hell did Trotz come in?
14, 15. It was from 14, 15 until 17, 18.
I wish he was still there. We'd be a better team.
So
point a game, a little less than point a game.
He had to get two of the 4 years. He was less than a point a game.
Okay, then, you're not talking about a 20-point drop here. You're talking about
he was still leading the NHL in goals. So I mean, like the guy's a Hall of Famer, and again, it's unfair to use him as an example.
Pull up John Carlson.
Yeah.
My God, Phil and TJ, the freaking same. I hate the both of them. It's sicking me, honestly.
All righty. So what Trotz left after was it?
So 14, 15. So he jumped dramatically when Trotz took over. Huge jump. The Trotz bump, as we call it, from 37 points to 55 points.
Then he went back to 39.
We also say that
39 points in 56 games.
Yeah, he couldn't stay healthy. Okay. Barry drove him into the ground and got him injured. Good job, Barry.
Oh, okay. After Trotz left, he's been here the last 4 years. I mean, 70 points, and then he was over a point a game for a defenseman. Then in a COVID bubble in a COVID truncated season, he's at still 44 points.
Trotz came in and made him into a horse. Let's get real.
His plus minus is so much better. He's just been better since Barry Trotz hasn't been there.
Oh, stop it. Trotz invented John Carlson.
Maybe he did really have a lot to play with a large role of him. I mean, he's again the
defense. Of course he did.
First, I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying when you're talking about point production, his point production has still been there post Trotz. I can argue and say the guy was young. Good players are always destined to be good players. Sure, does it help to have a good coach in order to,
why don't we put up?
My question is, who other than Barzell has had a dramatic dip? Whenever it says, "Oh, shave off 25% of their production," it just doesn't exist. It's made up.
Anders Lee's had a dramatic drop, but again, I think
Anders Lee had a dramatic drop because he was playing with John Tavares.
Well, I'm just saying you're asking dramatic drops. I just said it was JT, but I mean, Anders Lee's had a drop in his production. I mean, like a lot of the guys.
That's not a Trotz thing. That's a Tavares thing.
Why don't we put up Burakovsky and Verana? See how they did under Trotz as opposed to those guys.
Yeah, they're going to be better without post.
Probably freaking goose eggs when Barry was coach because he never give a young guy a shot, Phil. All right, DJ, more comments. Get to the comments.
Okay. This is a funny one. Paulo C said, "Yeah, Philzfacts. Brock Nelson, 25 goals, only 10 empty netters."
I think he only has 2 empty netters this year. But
I did like that. That was Parise who got the empty net last night. He made sure to hustle his ass off. He said, "Empty net goal on the way." Bam.
Did you see that Anders Lee, that lazy piece of shit, never come back to play any defense? Look at him driving down there trying to get an empty net or an Anders Lee special.
He's trying to run through people.
Anything to try to get that goal and make his stat line look good.
It's like
how the hell is he on the end of the minute? He can't move out there. Why is he out there in the last 2 minutes of a tight game?
It's like the kid in youth sports who doesn't try hard during the game and action. And as soon as it's like you get your free orange, you get your free orange slices.
He's the fat kid who never will hustle. It's like, okay, go get snacks. He's the first guy in line to get his damn snack at the end of the game.
Oh, God.
Thanks, Andrew.
Which 6 forwards would you want out there? I mean, if I'm thinking of 6 forwards, they never use Barzal in that situation.
Why not?
I don't know. You don't
use
a
better skater. There. I want guys who can skate.
Yeah.
I want someone who's defensively responsible in that situation, though, too.
There you go, Matt Barzal.
He's
ground him into the dirt where he's not an offensive player. He want to turn him into a grinder. He should be out there all the time.
Oh, man. Yep. And then Tommy B is also agreeing there. Brock Nelson, one of the better second line centers in the league. I agree with that.
No,
Mario.
Not true.
Now this is going to cover up Phil's facts. So Phil, if you need to go ahead and do some jumping jacks, you do some. Mario said, "I mentioned this before. Coming up, Shesterkin was always regarded as the better goalie. Sorokin's issue coming up in the Russian system was his positioning. He had a tendency to giggle up and down while his angles were poor. He needed 2 pushes to slide from side to side to cover the corners. Sorokin's athleticism made up for his deficiencies."
Mario's dead on.
I was about to say, no, this was something that Phil brought up earlier. So I want to show, hey, we got people who support your facts there. And again, who supported that ideology. BP said, "I agree 100%. Grumpy about Trotz. I say this all the time. He's a slave to the system."
Brian is so smart. It's scary.
Except when he disagrees with you about Brock Nelson.
That's the only time where he had that.
Right. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. It's all right, Phil. I'm not like you. I don't need constant Phil's right. Ooh, I don't need that. I don't need that.
And Jeremy F saying, "How could you not like Austin Czarnak's game? I would have taken him over any of our 4th line players. Cal Clutterbuck should have been moved preemptively. You saved $2.5 million, or even let's say, $1.8 million with Austin Czarnak over, or with Cal Clutterbuck 2.5. But even if you're with Austin Czarnak over Casey Cizikas, you save yourself $1.8 million.
And 5 years.
And 5 years.
Yeah.
He doesn't get anything. I mean,
you don't sign 4th liners who are 30 years old to 6-year extensions, Phil. You just don't do it.
I agree.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Call me when it's a problem. I agree. It's going to be a problem at some point. It's just not a problem right now.
Give me your number so I can call you right now. If I had your number, I'd be ringing you right now.
Hold on a second. Phil's is receiving a call. Frank G is saying here, I believe the Islanders have opened it up a lot, especially by Barry standards. You got to play Bailey to advertise him to trade him. Do you think that we've opened it up more to a little bit more of a heavier forecheck because we've struggled offensively this year? Do you think that we're opening up or starting to open it up a little more, and that's led to a few odd man rushes going the other way? You think we've done that under Barry Trotz's standards so far this year, or as of recent?
I think we're just leading to more odd man rushes because they are slow.
True. Particularly when our D are the guy who are leading the rushes.
Yeah, I mean, someone pointed out to me, he thinks that the reason why the two-way players on the team, like if you think about the two-way forwards, it's Pajot, it's Beauvillier, it's Zizekas, and the reason why the two-way forwards have been struggling more is because they're afraid of getting beat deep on a forecheck and having to race back to a situation where all of a sudden you've got Chara and Green getting smoked, and you have Pajot and Bo and Zizekas getting away from the game that they were playing last year. And I think there's definitely something to that. I think subconsciously they're just pulling it back and not dialing it in the same way that they were last season when they had more confidence in their back end. So I think there's something to that.
Got a comment here by Eddie. He said, watching paint dry was getting to me too excited, so I had to come here to listen to Phil.
I love it, Eddie.
Ariel C said here, then we better hope that he's available this offseason, talking about Philip Forsberg.
Yeah.
Now, do you think any team, again, I think that obviously you're going to probably have him being traded to a team as a rental, then sign in the offseason. Do you think any team, and again, I'm not sure if I haven't looked at every team's cap situation going forward, but Boston originally, when they went ahead and made that trade for what was at the time period Taylor Hall as a rental, did have cap space, were able to extend him. Do you think there's any team that could do something like that with a guy like Philip Forsberg? They want to make sure he doesn't hit the market this offseason. They think he's an excellent talent. We're going to trade to secure that we get him, and we're going to sign him immediately.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think I've seen one of those. I mean, Pajot did it, but you're not talking about a massive number. That's $5 million.
Mark Stone.
It's Stone. Stone is the last one I've seen.
Taylor Hall.
That wasn't a sign and trade, though. He was traded to a place where there was cap room, and technically speaking, he could have tested the market, but he was a fit with Boston. I think, off the top of my head, Colorado can't do it just because they need to keep room for McKinnon the following year and for Devon Toews, who are both, I think they're both up the same offseason. I could be wrong about that.
Toews has 2 more years left.
And McKinnon has 1 more year? Yeah, McKinnon has 1 more year. But bottom line is they need room for McKinnon, and they probably are going to want to keep Toews. I just don't know. You've got 16 teams using LTIR, and most of those are teams that are playoff teams. I don't know necessarily that there's going to be a team that's able to do a sign and trade at that price. You could get the 8th year to bring the price down, and then it's just a matter of, is that what Forsberg wants to do? So I guess, I mean, the good news, if you're, for the sickos out there who like to torment themselves with these flights of fancy, as we all do, and we're all going to do it tonight. We're going to go to bed thinking that Forsberg's going to be here in July.
Forsberg is ours.
Forsberg is ours. TJ's going to have a whole segment on it every single episode from now until July, whatever.
Yep. At least 10 minutes dedicated to it as well.
But there you go. But I mean, the good news is it sounds like Forsberg is not staying in Nashville and is going to test the open market.
He did that with Tarasenko last year, Phil. How did that turn out for you, DJ?
Well, Tarasenko went nowhere. He ended up going nowhere.
Very sad, especially once I see that his shoulder's looking A-okay. He's bounced back in every regard. So sad. I had to go ahead and return.
I mean, like if you're the Washington Capitals, do you really deal for Philip Forsberg?
They've got a window that's on the way closing, and I don't know.
The Rangers could do it, but they can't sign him though. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers end up landing him, and then they would be a much
Connor
scarier
McMichael's
team.
a left wing. Connor McMichael's a left wing. And now I think about like pieces they would have to give up, right? I assume Connor McMichael's going to have to go the other way. I assume there's going to be picks that are going to be involved. I mean, Philip Forsberg is going to be expensive to whoever trades for him, even if only for rental value.
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers are going to, if it's the Rangers, you're giving up a first rounder and one of their best prospects.
To me, the Rangers need defense help.
They do.
I'm not even worried about them scoring. I'm worried about them playing some defense. I'm really surprised that and it's all because of Shesterkin, right? That they're as good as they were this year. I did not expect them to make this type of jump.
I mean, they would be a better offensive team at 5-on-5 if they had better defense. I think that alone would help.
Yeah.
Just getting the puck in the offensive zone more.
And now I did see a rumor that Cal Clutterbuck, that Joe Sakic was asking and inquiring about Cal Clutterbuck. I think that one is more of a valid rumor, and I think that there is some validity behind it. You talk about the need to add a sandpaper guy who won't cost out that much. I mean, the Islanders, again, you could just say, yeah, I'll retain half the cap hit too if it makes things more entertaining there for them. If we get more of a return, we've got cap available. So I think that Cal Clutterbuck will be shopped and he will probably be traded. I'm like, when I think of return,
so
right, that could be as much as a second round pick for a guy like Cal Clutterbuck. Maybe value is he's a sandpaper guy. And I feel like every team needs a sandpaper grit guy and a guy who can get under the skin. If you don't have one of those, I think that's valuable to your team.
I think that is what they need, but why would they go? Maybe they should go up to Parise. Give him a little bit of pop.
They should. And Parise, you could get, if the Islanders retain half, you get Parise for $375K. Every team could fit that.
Why not do that? I mean, they could maybe do both. Add both guys.
You could do both.
And get yourself a second rounder, maybe a fourth or fifth, something like that. Why not? I mean, because that's what Colorado needs. I'll be honest with you. They're like Tampa was just a couple of years ago. They just need a little bit of some grit guys.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that could be, I'm not saying we'll put them over the top. I still don't think their goaltending is good enough.
Yeah, that's the difference there. It's Vasilevsky versus Kemper. It's not even.
But I think that it makes them more balanced. It's something that they need.
We got a comment here from Nick D. You guys got to have a podcast party with Phil, Andy, and Coach Tommy B. Grumpy old man, do you think you can handle that? Put Nicole on there for you, grumpy old man.
Geez, 6 people. So how many? 1, 2, 3,
be a conference call at that point.
6. Oh my God, that's a lot of people.
Frank
If Andy gets on there, we won't be able to say anything on the podcast.
He talks a lot.
Frank K says, Noah Dobson needs to eat his Hulkamania vitamins, Grump. I feel like that's something you grew up with as a kid, Hulkamania vitamins.
That's right. Say your prayers and eat your vitamins. Hanging and banging all night long. Not the type that Phil's talking about with Josh Bailey, though.
Giordano is a great short-term fix for the Islanders on the left-hand side for next year.
Why would he come there? I
agree. I think he'd be a good fit, but I agree with Grumpy. He won't come here.
We never sign anyone. We never sign anyone in any year. I don't understand why people think that all of a sudden Lou's going to break open the Bank of Malkin, and just throw money at all these people. He never does. It never happens. Just doesn't.
Ariel C said, I don't mind Parise. He's a hard worker, and if he gets paid league minimum, he's filled the role just finely. And again, talking about next year too.
100% agree with Ariel.
Daniel D says Parise would be good with Casey Cizikas on the fourth line, talking about going forward. If you trade him away, then re-signing him. Manfred S says, do I understand a switch of scenery between Anthony Beauvillier and Brock Besser? You do it in a heartbeat.
I would.
Now, would Vancouver do something like that?
I don't
Possibly. Besser really hasn't been that good.
I think I like him as a player, though. I just think he was under Travis Green. I think he kind of stalled out in his development.
A little bit, yeah.
But I don't know what Boudreau is doing there. I can't even comment on that. But Bavillier's so up and down too. I don't know. I like Besser. I've always.
They're both. Listen, Besser. It's not like Besser is this 40-goal scorer.
Yeah.
I think if he has the potential to be, because he's got a wicked shot. But
we already have Kiefer Bellows on the team, though.
When I look at
that position has been filled already.
When I look at Besser's,
See, Phil, I like how I'm able to make you laugh as soon as the podcast starts and just as we're getting to the end.
Exactly. We're right here towards the end. Mr. B said Bailey and Parise to Minnesota.
I don't think Parise would ever go back to Minnesota. If they traded him to Minnesota, he just wouldn't show up.
Ariel C said here, also, I think we need to stop with the no offense concept with the unrestricted free agents. Ovi was still able to score into trots, and Nicholas Backstrom was able to produce and score too.
Ariel is smart.
Just to provide the alternate point of view there.
And how much talent they had compared to what we have on this team.
Right, which fits what I'm saying, which basically is everyone's saying, oh, they're not scoring. They're scoring less because it's Trotz. No, they're scoring less because Tavares left. That's what happened.
He made players around him better.
Yes, more so than Barzal does.
Yes, absolutely. We've talked. Well, I'm not trying to cut you off, Phil, but I've talked about that previously as well.
Right.
As much as people hated John Tavares, he made players around him better, and Barzy does not do that.
Correct.
Ooh, got a real world comment here.
I would love to have Tavares on my first line center, Barzy is my second, and Croccarino on the third.
We had that once. We had it for a year, and then we screwed it up by having the worst coach ever.
But I mean,
in charge of that much talent. See, that was a very talented team.
I liked Nelson as a third line center.
Anyone who could get Josh Bailey to 72 points, was it? I mean, you're like Superman if you're doing that.
His mom couldn't even get him 72 points in the backyard.
We got a few comments. Drew Ellis says, looks like TJ's getting stuck getting McDonald's or Checkers. Looks like everything takeout's going to be closed at this point. Now, I don't know what I'm going to eat. It's probably going to be hot dogs at home. James F. says, so are we buyers or sellers? If so, who? We're definitely sellers. John P. mentioned a real world item. We don't like to talk about real world items on this one, but complete different concept. Russia just launched missiles into the capital of Ukraine, Kiev. My goodness gracious. So not
John, here's the thing. I was gonna wear I had it on today.
Your Eastern New Mexico University.
Eastern New Mexico Greyhound shirt. John, I will wear that tomorrow, just to let you know.
There it is. We're at the end of today's podcast. Number one, before we give sign-offs, I want to thank Phil for being on here, being always again a great guest, grumpy old man. I need to go, Philzfacts. Yeah. But we love having you on, Phil. But Phil, I want to give you a chance to do your sign off, and then we'll post up here your podcast, your Twitter, so everybody's able to see that as well. That's also all in the link in the description below, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep, that's the Top Shelf Hockey Cast. We record at random, no specific schedule. When they come out, you'll see it on my Twitter feed at Philzfacts, but that's with BD Galoff and David Tuckman.
Philzfacts is always a great Twitter to follow. A must follow Twitter. I do highly recommend. But Grumpy, what do you always say before we wrap things up on the podcast?
I want to say thank you to Mrs. Phil. Well, actually, we helped her tonight by taking Phil off of her hands, honestly. So you're welcome, Mrs. Phil. Just let you know that we've helped you out. But I like to say love and laughter to everyone who listens, and even those who don't, from TJ, the grumpy old man. And I'm going to throw Phil in there too. We do it honestly. We're just fans, and we love you people. And thank you so much for listening. Really.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry I was not able to get to all the comments today. We just had such a good conversation going. I just was only able to pull a few. Thank you so much. We always look at the comments. We read the comments. And again, we appreciate your input here on this podcast. We do this for you guys. We're just two fans who love talking hockey, love talking with people in the community about hockey. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, as always, Phil and Grumpy. Thank you for your time tonight as well.
My pleasure.
Well, have a great evening, and let's go Islanders. Let's go embrace the tank. Correction. So we'll be signing off here.